Hello beautiful people. Welcome to Gringotts Hub. In today's episode, we explore, what if Harry put on the Potter-Black-Slytherin rings and the magic of Hogwarts recognized him as sovereign? Hit like, subscribe, and join our community of story lovers. Let's begin. Chapter 1, When Prompted. Each subsequent prompt will request the next chapter, story outline. What if Harry put on the Potter-Black-Slytherin rings and the magic of Hogwarts recognized him as sovereign? Core premise: Harry Potter, age 15, discovers during a turbulent summer at Grimmauld Place that he is heir to not two but three ancient bloodlines, Potter, Black, and Slytherin, through the conquest right over Voldemort. When he claims all three lordship rings simultaneously, the combined magical weight of three founding-era houses triggers something unprecedented. Hogwarts Castle itself, a sentient magical construct, recognizes him as sovereign, the first in over 1,000 years. This isn't just a title. The wards answer to him. The room of requirement reshapes at his thought. The portraits report to him. The castle is, functionally, his weapon, his armor, and his kingdom. Themes: power without apology. Harry doesn't hide, doesn't hesitate, doesn't play small. Legitimacy versus authority. What makes someone worthy to rule? Institutional rot, the Ministry, Dumbledore's secrets, pure-blood politics, all challenged. Found family and loyalty earned, not demanded. The difference between sovereignty and tyranny. Character arcs: Harry Potter, from reactive survivor to proactive sovereign. He's not cruel, but he's done asking permission. His humor sharpens, his patience thins for manipulators, and his protective instincts now have teeth. Dumbledore, not evil, but a man whose chessboard just got flipped. His greater good planning crashes against Harry's refusal to be a piece. Must reckon with decades of secrets. Voldemort feels the Slytherin rings claim like a brand being ripped away. His connection to Hogwarts severed, his Horcrux in Harry destabilized. He's wounded in a way he doesn't understand, and wounded animals are dangerous. Daphne Greengrass, Slytherin, politically savvy, ice-cold exterior hiding sharp loyalty. Recognizes what Harry's Slytherin lordship means for her house's survival and allies herself with him, not as a sycophant, but as an equal who refuses to kneel to Voldemort. Neville Longbottom, the lordship of Longbottom awakens in response to Harry's claiming. Old magic calls to old magic. Becomes Harry's staunchest ally and the backbone of his inner circle. The Weasleys and Hermione, tested by Harry's transformation. Hermione adapts fastest, knowledge is her love language. Ron struggles with the gap but proves loyalty through action. Antagonist layers: Voldemort, primary threat, but now desperate and strategic rather than smugly superior. Harry's sovereignty strips his greatest psychological weapon, the idea that Hogwarts is his home, not Harry's. Lucius Malfoy and the Wisengamot block, political antagonists who see Harry's triple lordship as an existential threat to pureblood power structures. They'll use law, media, and assassination. Umbridge/Ministry, Fudge's government tries to delegitimize Harry's claim. Umbridge is deployed to Hogwarts as a Ministry observer, and finds that the castle itself refuses to cooperate with her. Chapter breakdown: Chapter 2, The Castle Wakes. The morning light hit differently inside Hogwarts when the castle wanted you to see it. Harry had spent the night in what the room of requirement had provided, not the cluttered training space of Dumbledore's army, but something else entirely. A suite of rooms that felt older than the castle itself, as though they'd been waiting beneath layers of forgotten magic. The bedroom had no windows, yet warm golden light filtered through the stone walls themselves, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The sitting room held a desk carved from a single piece of ancient oak, already stacked with leather-bound ledgers that he somehow knew contained the operational records of every ward, every passage, every secret Hogwarts held. He hadn't slept much. The rings hummed against his fingers, Potter on his right hand, Black and Slytherin on his left, and every time he drifted off, he'd felt the castle shifting around him. Not threatening. More like a dog pressing close to its returned master, unable to settle until it had confirmed he was real. Harry stood from the bed and the room responded. Torches brightened along the corridor outside. A doorway appeared in the wall to his left that he was absolutely certain hadn't existed 6 hours ago, and through it he could see a bathroom with a sunken tub already filling with steaming water. "Bit eager, aren't you?" he murmured. The stones beneath his feet warmed in response. He bathed, dressed in fresh clothes that had appeared folded on the desk, his own, pulled from his trunk wherever it had ended up, and considered his situation. Dumbledore would know he was here by now. McGonagall too. The portraits would have reported to both of them, though Harry found that thought interesting now. Because when he focused, he could feel the portraits. All of them. Hundreds of painted figures throughout the castle, and they were aware of him in a way that made his skin prickle. He reached out, not with his hand but with something else, some sense the rings had unlocked, and found a particular portrait. Phineas Nigellus Black, hanging in the headmaster's office. "Tell Dumbledore I'll meet him in the Great Hall for breakfast," Harry thought. Somewhere far above, he felt the portrait stir and obey. Harry allowed himself a grin. Then he opened the door of his suite and stepped into a corridor he'd never seen before, a straight shot, barely 50 meters, that deposited him directly behind the head table in the Great Hall. The castle was showing him its shortcuts. Its real ones, not the half-hidden passages that students stumbled upon over centuries. These were the arteries of Hogwarts, built for whoever held sovereignty, and they bent space in ways that would have made Hermione weep with academic joy. The Great Hall was empty except for one person. Professor McGonagall sat at the head table with a cup of tea, her spectacles perched on her nose, reading the Daily Prophet. She looked up when the hidden door opened in the wall behind her, a door she clearly hadn't known existed, given the way her eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. "Good morning, Professor," Harry said, sliding into the seat beside her as though this were perfectly normal. McGonagall set down her teacup with deliberate care. "Mr. Potter. I was informed by no fewer than 6 portraits that you arrived last night and that the castle," she paused, visibly collecting herself. "That the castle admitted you through the front gates without any staff present." "It did. The wards are keyed to the headmaster, Mr. Potter." "They have been for a long time," Harry agreed. "But not originally. And not anymore. Not exclusively, anyway." McGonagall studied him over her spectacles. She was not a woman given to panic or foolishness, and Harry had always respected that about her. She didn't bluster or demand. She simply looked at him, at the rings on his fingers, at the way he sat in a chair at the head table without a shred of apology, and she assessed. "You'll need to explain," she said. Not a question. A statement delivered with Scottish steel. "I will. When Dumbledore arrives. I don't want to do it twice. He's on his way. He's been in the ministry since 3 o'clock this morning." Harry raised an eyebrow. The pulse. It was felt at the ministry, at Gringotts, at every major magical institution in Britain. The unspeakables have been in a frenzy. McGonagall picked up her tea again, took a sip, and added, "You've caused quite the stir." "Good." She gave him a sharp look, but there was something in it, something that might have been approval, quickly hidden. "The headmaster will have questions. He usually does. I have some of my own." The flue in the antechamber roared green. McGonagall turned, but Harry didn't need to look. He felt Dumbledore's magical signature enter the castle like a stone dropped into still water, powerful, yes, immensely so, but the castle's wards rippled around it and reported back to Harry. "Welcomed guest. Not master." That distinction would matter soon. Dumbledore swept into the Great Hall in robes of midnight blue, his expression arranged into that grandfatherly calm that Harry had once found reassuring and now recognized as a mask worn so long it had fused to the skin beneath. "Harry, my boy." Dumbledore's eyes swept over him, lingering on the rings, on the way the morning light seemed to bend toward Harry as though the castle's enchanted ceiling was favoring him. "I had hoped we might discuss last night's events privately." "No." The word hung in the air. McGonagall's teacup froze halfway to her lips. Dumbledore blinked. "I beg your pardon." "I said no." Harry met the old man's eyes without flinching. The legitimacy probe he'd half expected never came, or rather, it started to come and then something else intervened. Harry felt it like a wall of warm stone sliding between his mind and Dumbledore's reaching thought. The castle's protection, offered without him asking. "Sit down, Professor. We'll talk here. McGonagall deserves to hear this, and I'm done having conversations in rooms where only you control the narrative." Dumbledore stood very still for a long moment. Then, slowly, he pulled out the headmaster's chair and sat. His blue eyes had lost their twinkle. What replaced it was something more honest, sharp calculation, concern, and beneath that, something Harry thought might be genuine fear. "The rings," Dumbledore said quietly. "You've claimed all three. Potter by blood. Black by Godfather's will, which you knew about and never told me. Slytherin by right of conquest." Harry laid his hands on the table, the three rings catching the enchanted sunlight. "The Potter ruby, the black onyx, the Slytherin emerald. You knew about the Black Lordship. You had Sirius's will locked in your desk for months." McGonagall turned to stare at Dumbledore with an expression that could have etched glass. "Harry, you must understand, the timing was not, don't." Harry's voice was quiet but it carried. The acoustics of the great hall shifted, amplifying him just slightly, as though the room itself leaned in to listen. "Don't tell me about timing. Don't tell me about protection through ignorance. I've spent 4 years walking into traps that I might have avoided if anyone had told me the truth about who I am and what I'm owed." "The Slytherin claim," Dumbledore pressed, leaning forward. "Harry, it was never confirmed. The conquest right is ancient, volatile, the ring disagrees." Harry raised his left hand. The Slytherin ring pulsed with emerald light, and somewhere deep in the castle, a pipe groaned, the plumbing that ran alongside the Chamber of Secrets, answering its new master. "Magic disagrees. And frankly, Dumbledore, Hogwarts disagrees. Which brings us to the point." He stood. Not dramatically, just rose from his chair the way someone does when they're done sitting. But the castle responded. The enchanted ceiling above brightened. The house banners along the walls stirred without wind. The 4 hourglasses that tracked house points chimed once, in unison, a tone that hadn't been heard in a millennium. "Hogwarts has recognized me as sovereign," Harry said. "I didn't ask for it. I didn't perform a ritual or make a claim. I put on 3 rings that were mine by right, and the castle decided that was enough. That I was enough." Silence. Absolute silence. Even the portraits on the walls had gone still. "That's," Dumbledore shook his head slowly. "Harry, the sovereignty of Hogwarts is a legend. A story from the Founder's era. There has never been a confirmed, there is now." McGonagall set down her teacup with a click. "What does it mean? Practically speaking?" Harry looked at her and felt a rush of gratitude. Trust Minerva McGonagall to skip the disbelief and go straight to logistics. "It means the ward's answer to me. Not exclusively, you're still headmaster," he added to Dumbledore. "You can still run the school. But the castle's deepest protections, its oldest magic. Those are mine now. I can feel every person inside these walls. I know where every passage leads. I can open doors that have been sealed since the Founders left." He paused. "And I can keep people out. Or keep them in." Dumbledore's expression had gone very carefully blank. "And the staff? The students? Are safe. Safer than they've ever been, because I'm not going to let this castle be used as a battleground again." Harry sat back down. No more trolls in the dungeon because someone wanted to test an 11-year-old. No more basilisks roaming the pipes. No more Death Eaters pretending to be teachers. The pointed reference to Barty Crouch Jr. made Dumbledore flinch. "Good. I'm not taking your job," Harry said, letting his voice soften just slightly. I'm not interested in being headmaster. I'm 15. But I am taking responsibility for the safety of everyone inside these walls, because clearly no one else has been doing it properly. McGonagall made a sound that might have been a smothered laugh, quickly converted into a cough. Dumbledore was quiet for a long time. His hands were folded on the table, and Harry noticed they were trembling slightly. Not from fear, from the strain of recalculating decades of careful planning in real time. The Ministry will not accept this, Dumbledore said finally. The Ministry doesn't get a vote. This is between me and the castle, and that's older than any government. Cornelius will send, let him send whoever he wants. Harry smiled, and it was not a nice smile. You think I don't know about Umbridge? About the educational decrees they've been planning? Let her come. Let her try to override magic that was old when the Ministry was still a bunch of wizards arguing in a pub. Dumbledore sat back. Something shifted in his expression, the faintest crack in the careful mask, and what showed through was complex. There was loss there, yes. The loss of control, of the careful narrative he'd built around Harry Potter. But there was also, and Harry was surprised by this, something that looked almost like relief. You've grown, Harry, Dumbledore murmured. More than I accounted for. That's what happens when you treat someone like a mushroom. Keep them in the dark, feed them, I take your point. A ghost of a smile. What do you need from me? Harry hadn't expected that question so quickly. He'd prepared for a longer fight, more manipulation, more gentle obfuscation. But Dumbledore was nothing if not adaptive, and perhaps, just perhaps, some part of the old man was genuinely glad to share the weight. Information, Harry said. Everything you know about Voldemort. His Horcruxes, yeah, I know about those now, the ring told me things, his allies, his plans. No more strategic drip-feeding. I need everything. Dumbledore's face went grey. You know about, the Horcruxes. Plural. Including the one that used to be in my scar. Both professors stared. Used to be. Dumbledore whispered. Harry touched his forehead. The scar was still there, he'd checked in the mirror that morning, but it was just a scar now. Dead skin. No pain, no connection, no whispering presence in the back of his mind. When I put on the Slytherin ring and claimed the conquest right, something happened. The Slytherin magic recognized me as the true heir by victory. And it evicted the pretender's fragment. Burned it out. He paused. It hurt like nothing I've ever felt. But it's gone. Dumbledore's hands were shaking openly now. Harry, I spent years, the research, the plans, one of my deepest fears was that I'd have to die. Yeah. Harry kept his voice even, but something cold moved through him. Were you ever going to tell me? Or were you just going to shepherd me toward the slaughter and hope it worked out? The silence was answer enough. McGonagall stood so abruptly her chair scraped stone. Albus. Albus. Tell me he's wrong. Tell me you weren't planning to, Minerva, don't you Minerva me. Her voice could have cut diamond. Is he telling the truth? Were you raising this boy like a lamb for sacrifice? Dumbledore closed his eyes. It was, one possibility among many that I was still, get out. Both men looked at McGonagall. Get out of this hall and go to your office. I need, she pressed her lips together until they disappeared. I need a moment. And then we will all have a very long conversation about what is and is not acceptable when it comes to the students in my care. Dumbledore rose, looking every one of his many years. He paused beside Harry's chair. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I am glad that possibility has been removed. More glad than you know. Then he left. His footsteps echoed in the empty hall, and Harry felt the castle tracking him all the way to the gargoyle staircase. McGonagall sat back down. She removed her spectacles, pressed her fingers to the bridge of her nose, and breathed. Harry waited. "Potter," she said at last, her voice rough. "Harry. I want you to know, if I had known, I know," he said gently. "I know you didn't." She replaced her spectacles with the precise movements of someone reassembling their composure. "Right. Well. You said you're not interested in running the school." "No." "Good. Because I've been doing half the work for 20 years and I'd rather not train someone new." The ghost of her usual tartness returned. "But this sovereignty business, it will cause upheaval. The students return in 3 weeks. We need a plan. I have the beginnings of one." Harry pulled one of the ledgers toward him. It had appeared on the table without either of them seeing it arrive. "But first, I need to deal with my lordships officially. Gringotts, the Wisengamot seats, the political side. Can I count on your support?" McGonagall looked at him. 15 years old. Battle-scarred, clear-eyed, wearing the rings of 3 ancient houses with the weight of a castle at his back. She'd watched this boy grow from a skinny child who didn't know he was a wizard to this. "Always," she said. The owls came before noon. Harry had spent the morning walking the castle, letting it show him what it wanted him to see. Hidden rooms. Sealed passages. A chamber beneath the astronomy tower where the ward's anchor stones pulsed with silver light, each one inscribed with runes in 4 different hands, the founders, working together on the only project they'd all agreed upon. He'd found the kitchens without trying. The house elves had known before he arrived, they'd felt the shift in the castle's magic and had been buzzing with barely contained excitement. Dobby had appeared with a crack that was almost a shriek, launched himself at Harry's knees, and babbled something about the great master of the castle, before Harry had managed to peel him off and ask for toast. "The castle has been sleeping," Dobby said, his enormous eyes even wider than usual. "Sleeping for so long, Harry Potter, sir. But now it wakes. We all feels it. Is the castle treating you all right? The elves, I mean." Dobby nodded so vigorously his ears flapped. "Oh yes, Harry Potter, sir. The castle is kind to us. It has always been kind. But now it is awake kind. It is asking us what we needs, not just telling us what to do." That was interesting. Harry filed it away. By the time he returned to the Great Hall, taking the normal route this time, learning the castle's mood through the slower path, owls were streaming through the high windows. Letters and parcels and a howler, he let the castle's magic muffle that one before it could detonate, piled on the table where he'd eaten breakfast. Gringotts had sent a thick envelope sealed with their crest, requesting a meeting at his earliest convenience to formalize the lordships. The ministry had sent 3 separate letters, one from the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, one from the minister's office, and one from the Wisengamot administration that was essentially a summons. The Daily Prophet had sent a request for an interview. And there were personal letters, one from Hermione, whose handwriting suggested she'd written at speed and in excitement, one from Ron, whose handwriting suggested confusion and mild alarm, and one from a name he didn't recognize at first. Daphne Greengrass. He opened that one last. "Lord Potter-Black-Slytherin, I am writing in my capacity as heiress to the noble house of Greengrass. You don't know me beyond shared classrooms and you have no reason to trust this letter, so I'll be direct. My family is neutral in the current conflict. We have refused the Dark Lord's recruitment and paid for that refusal in social isolation and quiet threats. Your claiming of the Slytherin lordship changes the political landscape of our house and every other neutral or moderate Slytherin family in Britain. I am not writing to beg protection or swear false fealty. I am writing because you need allies who understand the politics of the houses you've claimed, and I need a patron who won't demand my family kneel to a madman. I'd like to meet at Hogwarts, if you'll permit it. Before term begins, if possible. Regards, Daphne Greengrass." Harry read it twice. It was remarkably straightforward, no flattery, no manipulation he could detect. Just a clean transaction offered in plain language. He respected that. He set it aside and opened Hermione's letter. Harry James Potter, if you claimed 3 lordships and didn't tell me first, I will never forgive you. Ron says there was some kind of magical earthquake last night and the wireless went mad, and I've been trying to reach you by flow, but Grimmauld Place is empty and nobody knows where you are. Where are you? Are you safe? Please write back immediately. Also, I've been reading about the conquest right in magical law theory, and if what I think happened actually happened, then we need to talk about 12 different precedents and the implications for. The letter went on for 3 more pages. Harry smiled, his first genuine smile of the day, and set it aside to answer later. Ron's was shorter. Mate, Mum's freaking out. Something massive happened last night and the twins are saying it felt like someone turned Diagon Alley inside out for a second. Dad got called into work at midnight. Are you okay? Where are you? Dumbledore won't tell us anything, which means it's about you. Write back or I'm coming to find you. Harry wrote back to both of them immediately. Short notes: I'm at Hogwarts, I'm safe, I'll explain everything soon, come visit in 2 days when I've sorted things. He sent Hedwig with Hermione's and borrowed a school owl for Ron's. Then he wrote back to Daphne Greengrass. Miss Greengrass, tomorrow. Noon. The castle will admit you. H. Potter short. Direct. Matching her energy. He sent it off and turned to the Gringotts envelope. The financial details were staggering. He'd known the Potter vault was substantial, he'd seen it at 11 and been overwhelmed. But the Black Fortune dwarfed it. And the Slytherin vault, dormant for centuries, accumulating interest in goblin-managed investments, was the kind of wealth that could buy policy, fund armies, or reshape institutions. Harry wasn't interested in money for its own sake. But he understood, with a clarity that surprised him, that gold was a weapon. And he was in a war. He spent the afternoon in the headmaster's office, invited this time, on his own terms. Dumbledore had reorganized himself remarkably quickly, which Harry attributed to over a century of practice at adapting to new realities. The old man laid out everything he knew about the Horcruxes with the air of someone finally setting down a weight they'd carried too long. The diary, destroyed. The ring, destroyed, though it had cost Dumbledore his hand, which Harry now noticed was blackened and dead-looking, hidden usually by his sleeve. The locket, the cup, the diadem, the snake. Nagini. The one in your scar is gone, Dumbledore said, and there was wonder in his voice. I spent years, Harry, trying to find a way to remove it without killing you. Every path I found led to your death. The Slytherin magic simply overrode it. Claimed you as rightful heir and rejected the false fragment. Lucky me, Harry said dryly. More than luck. The conquest right is not merely legal, it is magical in the deepest sense. You defeated Tom's shade at 1 year old. You defeated his memory at 12. You escaped his resurrected form at 14. Magic accumulated those victories like interest in a vault. When you finally claimed the ring, the account came due. Harry absorbed this. The diadem. You said you think it's here, in the castle. I believe so. Hidden, perhaps in, the room of requirement. Room of hidden things. Harry felt it even as he said it, a dark spot in the castle's warm awareness, like a splinter under the skin. A wrongness. I can feel it. The castle can feel it. It's been trying to reject it for decades, but without a sovereign to authorize. He trailed off because the castle was showing him something. Not in words, in pure spatial awareness, a map drawn in sensation. The exact location of the diadem, its shelf, the piles of junk surrounding it. I'll deal with it today, Harry said, standing. Harry, Horcruxes are incredibly dangerous. The protections on them are designed to ward off attackers. I'm not an attacker. I'm the owner of the castle it's squatting in, and I'm serving an eviction notice. He paused at the door. Do you have basilisk venom? From the chamber? Dumbledore stared at him, then slowly nodded. Preserved, in my private stores. You want it for, the fawn worked on the diary. It'll work on the diadem. I'll have it brought to you. Harry nodded and left. The gargoyle sprang aside before he reached it, and the staircase moved faster than he'd ever experienced, the castle hurrying him along like an excited accomplice. The room of hidden things was exactly as he remembered from a half-glimpsed visit in his explorations, mountains of abandoned objects, centuries of students' hidden treasures and shameful secrets. But now Harry could see it differently. The room's magic was layered over his awareness like a grid, and one point on that grid throbbed with infected darkness. He walked straight to it. No searching, no wandering through the maze of broken furniture and forgotten textbooks. The aisles rearranged themselves as he passed, junk shifting aside to clear his path. The castle wanted this thing gone. The diadem sat on a bust of some forgotten wizard, tarnished silver and blue sapphire. It was beautiful in a corrupt way, like a poisoned apple, all surface perfection with rot beneath. Harry could feel the Horcrux inside it, a screaming fragment of soul trapped in metal, radiating malice. It whispered to him as he approached. Put me on. I can give you wisdom beyond. Shut up, Harry said. He was wearing dragon-hide gloves, conjured by the room the moment he thought he might need them. In his other hand, he held a basilisk fang, its venom still potent after years of magical preservation. No hesitation. No dramatic pause. Harry picked up the diadem, set it on the ground, and drove the fang through its center. The scream that erupted was not quite sound, it was magic, tearing itself apart, a fragment of Tom Riddle's soul shredding into nothing. Dark smoke poured from the ruined metal, coalescing briefly into a face, young, handsome, furious, before the castle's ward slammed down on it like a portcullis. The smoke dispersed. The diadem was a melted ruin. The dark spot in Harry's awareness of the castle vanished, replaced by clean, clear warmth. Harry stood up, breathed out, and felt the castle settle around him with what could only be described as satisfaction. 1 down. 3 to go, plus the snake. He left the room of hidden things and found the castle had a new door waiting for him in the 7th floor corridor. Not the room of requirement's usual entrance. A different door entirely, smaller, ancient, carved with a symbol he recognized from the sovereignty ledgers. He opened it and found a study. Warm fire, comfortable chairs, a window that showed the lake from an angle that shouldn't have been architecturally possible. And in one of the chairs sat a translucent, silvery figure. Not a ghost, not like nearly headless Nick or the Bloody Baron. This was something else. A magical echo, perhaps, or an imprint left deliberately in the castle's foundations. It was a woman, young, with long hair and an expression of immense, weary intelligence. Took you long enough, she said. Harry blinked. Who, Rowena? The figure smiled tiredly. Or what's left of what Rowena left behind. Not a ghost. More of a letter. Written in magic instead of ink, sealed until someone worthy opened it. She looked at his hands, at the rings. 3 houses. And the castle chose you. I suppose that makes you the first one to hear what I have to say in approximately 900 years. Harry sat down. This day was apparently not done being extraordinary. I don't have long, the echo of Rowena Ravenclaw said. The magic sustaining me fades as it delivers its message. So listen carefully. I'm listening. Hogwarts was not built to be a school. She held up a hand to forestall his reaction. It became one, a good one, mostly. But it was built to be a stronghold. A seat of power for whoever could unite the magical lines of Britain. We built it because we foresaw a time when our world would need a single point of authority that was magical, not political, not governmental. Magical. Rooted in the land and the ley lines and the old agreements between wizard kind and the earth itself. And the sovereignty was supposed to be claimed in every generation. A test, could someone unite enough magical lineage and enough personal power to wake the castle fully? It hasn't happened because the house is fragmented after we died. Our students split into factions. Nobody could hold enough lines. She looked at him intently. Until a half-blood orphan defeated the last heir of Slytherin by surviving a killing curse as an infant, and then kept defeating him until magic had no choice but to acknowledge the obvious. That I'm, what? Worthy? That you're enough. Rowena's echo was growing fainter. The castle will teach you. It has 1,000 years of accumulated knowledge in its stones. But here's what I need you to know before I fade, the sovereignty is not just about Hogwarts. The castle is a nexus. Every ley line in Britain passes through or near these grounds. As sovereign, you can touch them all. The land will answer you, Harry Potter, not just the building. She was barely visible now, just a shimmer in the firelight. One more thing. Salazar's monster, the basilisk. Its corpse is still in the chamber. I know. I killed it. At 12. The faintest smile. Of course you did. Use its remains. The venom destroys Horcruxes. The skin is the strongest magical armor on Earth. The bones can be ground for wand cores of extraordinary power. And the eyes, even dead, can power ward stones that would make this castle truly impregnable. Thank you, Harry said. Don't thank me. Deserve it. Make what we built matter. She faded. The fire crackled. Harry sat alone in a room that was 900 years old and felt the weight of legacy settle on his shoulders like a cloak. He didn't shrug it off. Daphne Greengrass arrived at noon the next day, precisely as arranged. Harry felt her approach from the moment she passed through the Hogwarts gates, the castle announcing her like a butler presenting a guest card. Magical signature, cool, precise, structured. No dark marks, no hostile intent. The wards tasted her and found her acceptable. He met her in the entrance hall rather than make her wander. She was taller than he'd expected, or maybe he'd just never looked properly. Ice blonde hair, sharp features, blue eyes that assessed him with the same frank calculation he imagined she applied to everything. She wore wizarding robes of deep green, her house colors, worn deliberately, he guessed. A statement, I am Slytherin and I am not ashamed of it and I am not your enemy. Lord Potter-Black-Slytherin, she said, inclining her head exactly the right amount. Not a bow, not casual. Political precision. That's a mouthful. Harry works. Then Daphne will do. She looked around the entrance hall, and he saw her register what he'd already noticed, the torches burning a fraction brighter, the suits of armor standing straighter, the almost imperceptible hum of awareness in the air. The castle feels different. You've been here 5 years. You'd notice. It feels alive. She looked back at him. The rumors are true, then. Which ones? I've lost track. Something that might have been the beginning of a smile tugged at her mouth. That Hogwarts recognized you as its master. That's what the pulse was, the castle waking up. That's the gist. Harry gestured. Walk with me. They walked. He led her not to any of the usual meeting spaces but through the castle itself, letting her see how it responded to him. Doors opening before he reached them. Staircases halting mid-swing to wait for him to pass. A window rearranging its stained glass to show them the view of the lake as they passed. Daphne watched all of it with sharp, hungry attention. Not greedy, analytical. Filing away data. You're showing me this deliberately, she said after the third staircase bent to his will. Yes. Why? Because you wrote me a letter that was honest and direct, and I'm returning the favor. You want to know if I'm powerful enough to be worth allying with. I want you to see the answer with your own eyes so we can skip the posturing. She was quiet for a few steps. Most people in your position would make me prove myself first. You already did. You sent that letter. Everyone else in Slytherin is either cowering, scheming, or pretending they don't know what happened. You walked through the front door and introduced yourself. That tells me enough to start the conversation. They'd reached the room the castle had provided for this meeting, not the ancient study where Rowena's echo had appeared, but a comfortable sitting room with 2 chairs angled toward each other, tea already waiting. Daphne eyed the tea with something approaching respect. The castle anticipated our meeting. The castle is very eager to be helpful. Harry sat and poured. So. Your letter said your family refused Voldemort. Daphne didn't flinch at the name, which was another point in her favor. My father told Lucius Malfoy to take his dark mark and insert it somewhere anatomically improbable. This was 2 years ago, when the first recruitment whispers started, before anyone believed the Dark Lord was truly back. Brave. Stupid, many said. We've been quietly blacklisted from most pure-blood social circles. Lost 2 business contracts. Received 1 cursed letter that put my younger sister in St. Mungo's for a week. Her voice was level, but Harry caught the flash of cold fury in her eyes at the mention of her sister. Astoria is fine now. But I don't forget. What do you want from me? Formally. The protection of the Slytherin Lordship extended to House Greengrass as a vassal house in good standing. It's an ancient arrangement, your predecessors would have offered it automatically to any Slytherin-aligned family that refused the Dark Lord's banner. And informally. She set down her teacup. Informally, I want to win. I want the Dark Lord dead and his followers broken and my family safe. I want my sister to finish her education without being targeted. And I want Slytherin House to be something other than a Death Eater recruitment pool. She met his eyes. I'm very good at politics. I understand the Wisengamot, the pure-blood customs, the alliances and enmities between houses. I can be useful to you, not as a servant, but as an advisor. Harry studied her. He could feel the castle's opinion, or what passed for one, a sense of approval, of rightness. Not a guarantee of trust, but an indication that her words matched her intent. No deception in her, at least not today. The protection is yours, he said. And your family's. I'll formalize it through Gringotts. There's paperwork for this kind of thing, apparently. Something shifted in Daphne's posture. Not much, she was too controlled for visible relief, but her shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch. Thank you. As for the advisor role, prove it. I'm taking my Wisengamot seats in 4 days. Tell me something useful about what I'll face. Daphne leaned forward, and for the first time, she smiled properly. It was sharp and fierce and not at all warm, and Harry found it oddly compelling. Lucius Malfoy has a block of 11 votes he controls through debt, blackmail, or blood alliance. He'll move against your Slytherin claim immediately. He can't allow a non-pureblood to hold the Slytherin Lordship because it undermines every argument he's used for 20 years to maintain his power base. How will he move? Legal challenge first. He'll argue conquest right doesn't apply because Voldemort never formally held the Lordship, which is nonsense. The magic doesn't care about formality, but Wisengamot procedure runs on precedent and he'll try to bury you in it. And when that fails? Assassination. She said it matter-of-factly. Probably contracted through intermediaries. The Malfoys don't get their hands dirty. Good thing the castle is watching. Harry tapped his ring finger against his cup. What about Fudge? Minister Fudge will do whatever the last powerful person in his ear told him to do. Right now that's Malfoy. But if you demonstrate enough power, publicly, undeniably, Fudge will flip. He's a weathervane, not a man. She paused. He's already sent Dolores Umbridge as his response to Dumbledore. She has an appointment as defense against the dark arts teacher and High Inquisitor. She arrives in a week. Harry smiled. I know about Umbridge. Then you know she's going to try to dismantle Dumbledore's authority over the school. What she doesn't know, what nobody outside this room knows, is that the castle has a higher authority than the headmaster now. It'll be fun to watch her figure that out. Daphne looked at him with those sharp blue eyes. You're enjoying this. Harry considered the question honestly. Was he? Yesterday he'd been angry, at Dumbledore, at the situation, at years of manipulation. But today, with the castle humming around him and allies presenting themselves and a clear path forward for the first time in his life. Yeah, he said. I am. 2 days later, Hermione and Ron arrived. Harry met them at the gates and felt their magical signatures register with the wards, familiar, safe, wanted. The castle practically purred as it admitted them. Hermione was out of the carriage before it stopped, her hair wilder than usual, a bag that clearly contained books slung over one shoulder. She took one look at Harry, at the way he stood, at the rings, at the subtle glow of the castle responding to his presence, and her eyes went the size of dinner plates. Harry James Potter, she breathed. You achieved Hogwarts sovereignty. You actually, it's real. I read about it in Hogwarts, a History. Paragraph 7 of the appendix on castle governance. Yes, I know. You've mentioned the book once or twice. She swatted his arm and then hugged him fiercely. You're okay. You're really okay. The scar, in your letter you said the Horcrux, gone. Completely gone. She pulled back, gripping his shoulders, searching his face. Whatever she found there made her eyes fill with tears. Oh, Harry. Ron had climbed out behind her, moving slower, and Harry could read his best friend's expression like the open book it was. Awe, confusion, a flicker of that old jealousy, and then Ron shoved it all aside with visible effort, crossed the distance, and clapped Harry on the shoulder hard enough to stagger him. You look different, Ron said. Good different. Less like you're carrying everything by yourself. Harry blinked. That was, unexpectedly perceptive. I'm not carrying it alone anymore, Harry said. That's sort of the point. Right. Well. Ron looked up at the castle. We going in, or are you going to make us stand out here while Hermione cries? I'm not crying, your face is wet, Hermione. It's allergies, Harry laughed, properly laughed, and led them inside. The castle rolled out the proverbial red carpet, not literally, though he suspected it would if he asked. Warm light, perfect temperature, the smell of fresh baking from somewhere that probably wasn't the kitchen's but might as well have been. He showed them everything. The Sovereignty Suite. The ward stones. The hidden passages. The way the castle's awareness overlaid his own. Ron's eyes got progressively wider. Hermione alternated between rapturous fascination and furious note-taking. The implications for magical theory alone, Hermione was saying as they settled in the sitting room. A sentient construct choosing a sovereign based on accumulated magical resonance across multiple bloodlines, it's unprecedented. Every magical theorist since Adalbert Waffling has assumed the founder's enchantments were finite. But if the castle can choose, then it's not just enchanted, it's alive, Harry said. Not like us. But alive in its own way. Ron had been quiet, absorbing. Now he spoke up. And you're sure Dumbledore's not going to, I dunno, try to take it back? He can't. The castle chose me. He could no more take it back than he could take my blood. Harry looked at Ron steadily. I'm not going to pretend this doesn't change things. It does. But you're my best mate, Ron. That hasn't changed. I need people around me I trust, and I trust you with my life. Ron's ears went red, that Weasley tell for strong emotion, and he nodded jerkily. Right. Yeah. So what do you need? Honestly? I need you to tell me when I'm being an arse. Power's great, but having someone who'll look me in the eye and say, mate, you're wrong, is better. Ron grinned. Been doing that for free for 4 years. See? Natural fit. Hermione had stopped writing and was looking between them with a soft expression. Then she straightened, all business. The Wisengamot session. Tell me everything. I've been researching precedents, I have an advisor for the political side, Harry said, and watched both their faces carefully. Daphne Greengrass. Hermione's eyebrows rose. Ron's jaw dropped. Greengrass? The Slytherin? Ice Queen Greengrass. She's sharp, she knows pureblood politics, and her family refused Voldemort at real cost. She came to me, not begging, just offering a fair trade. Harry spread his hands. I'm Lord Slytherin now. I need to understand that world if I'm going to change it. Ron looked like he wanted to argue, struggled with it visibly, and then let out a breath. Fine. But if she turns, the castle will know before she does. It can read intent, Ron. Not thoughts, but intent. If anyone in these walls means me genuine harm, I'll know. That's. Ron blinked. Actually really useful. Isn't it just? Hermione had already moved on, her mind racing ahead. Harry, the Horcruxes. You destroyed the diadem already. That leaves the locket, the cup, and the snake. Do you have locations? Dumbledore thinks the locket is at Grimmauld Place, hidden there by Regulus Black. Which, as Lord Black, I can summon directly. The cup is in the Lestrange vault at Gringotts. And Nagini never leaves Voldemort's side. Gringotts won't be easy, Gringotts will do what I tell them when I walk in as the holder of 3 of their largest accounts. Gold talks in goblin language, Hermione. And I speak it fluently now. He held up the black ring. This alone represents enough wealth to fund a small country. They'll cooperate. And the snake? Harry's expression hardened. The snake dies when Voldemort does. He won't let it out of his sight, so we deal with them together. At the end. The fire crackled. Outside, the Scottish sun was setting over the lake, painting the sky in golds and purples. Inside, 3 friends sat together and planned a war, but for the first time, they weren't scrambling, weren't reacting, weren't playing catch-up to forces beyond their control. For the first time, they were ahead. The letter from Neville arrived that evening, and it was unlike any communication Harry had ever received from the quiet, round-faced boy. Harry, something happened to me last night. My magic, I don't know how to describe it. It surged. Gran's wards triggered like we were under attack, but it was coming from inside the house. From me. The Longbottom Lordship ring that's been in our vault for 50 years, the one nobody could wear because it kept rejecting everyone who tried. It appeared on the kitchen table this morning. And when I picked it up, it went on my finger without resistance. Gran fainted. Gran. The woman who survived Grindelwald's war fainted. I don't know what's happening, but I think it's connected to whatever you did. The ring keeps pulling me toward Hogwarts. Like there's something I need to be there for. I'm coming tomorrow, if you'll have me. Neville. Harry read the letter and felt the castle's reaction, a deep, resonant yes that vibrated through the stones. Old magic calling to old magic, just as Rowena's echo had implied. The sovereignty wasn't just about him. It was about awakening something larger, a network of ancient houses and old alliances that had slept since the founder's time. He wrote back, "Come." And beneath his feet, the castle of Hogwarts hummed with anticipation. Its sovereign had returned, his allies were gathering, and somewhere in the dark places of Britain, a Dark Lord was about to learn that the rules had changed. All of them. Chapter 3, The Wizengamot Burns. Neville Longbottom walked through the gates of Hogwarts and the ground shook. Not dramatically, not an earthquake. More like the earth exhaling, settling, acknowledging. Harry felt it through the castle's awareness, the ley lines beneath the ground's flaring gold as Neville's boots touched the path, the Longbottom ring on his finger resonating with something deep in the bedrock. The Longbottoms had been earth mages since before the founders. Their magic was rooted in soil and stone and growing things, and Hogwarts remembered. Harry met him at the front doors. Neville looked different. Not physically, not yet. He was still broad-shouldered and slightly soft, still had that open honest face. But he moved differently. Less hesitation in his step, less apology in the set of his shoulders. The lordship ring on his right hand was a band of burnished copper set with amber, and it pulsed with a warm light that matched the castle's greeting. Neville. Harry. Neville stopped at the top of the steps, looked at him, at the rings, at the castle behind him, at the faint luminescence in the air that followed Harry wherever he walked inside these walls. It's true, then. All of it. All of it. Neville let out a breath. Good. Because Gran spent 2 hours telling me I'd gone mad, and I was starting to believe her. Harry grinned and clasped his hand. The moment their rings made contact, something sparked, not painful, but vivid. A connection, like two notes finding harmony. The castle sang around them, a low tone felt in the chest rather than heard. What was that? Neville pulled back, staring at his hand. Old magic recognizing old magic. Come inside. I'll explain everything. They walked through the castle together, and Harry watched Neville react to it. Where Daphne had been analytical and Hermione academic, Neville was visceral. He pressed his palm flat against a stone wall and closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were bright. I can feel it, he whispered. The castle. It's like a greenhouse. A living thing. Growing. Rowena Ravenclaw called it a stronghold. But you might be closer to the truth. It's both. Neville turned, and there was a sharpness in his expression that Harry hadn't seen before, the look of someone whose mind was working at full speed for the first time. Harry, the ley lines under this castle, do you know what they connect to? Everything, apparently. Not just everything. Every magical place. Every old manor, every ancient grove, every standing stone. The ley network is like a root system. And Hogwarts is the trunk. He was speaking faster now, words tumbling out. I've been reading. Since the ring came to me, it's like I can read the land. My family's magic, it was always about this. Growing things, understanding the earth. But the lordship ring unlocked something more. I can feel where the lines are damaged. Where they've been cut or corrupted. Harry stared at him. This was not the Neville who forgot passwords and melted cauldrons. This was someone whose power had been dammed up for 15 years and was now flowing free. The ley lines are damaged. In places. Around, Neville hesitated. Around places the Death Eaters gather. Their dark magic isn't just hurting people, Harry. It's hurting the land. Poisoning the network from the inside. Can you fix it? I think so. With time, and with access to the nexus point. He looked at Harry steadily. That's here. That's you. Harry nodded slowly. Then we work together. You handle the ley network, I handle the castle and the politics. Deal? Neville's face broke into a grin, fierce, confident, certain. Deal. They shook on it, and the castle hummed its approval so loudly that portraits 3 corridors away rattled on their hooks. The morning of the Wisengamot session, Harry dressed with care. Not in school robes or the shabby hand-me-downs of his childhood. The goblins had sent formal lordship robes, 3 sets, 1 for each house, but Harry had asked the castle's magic to merge them into something unified. The result was striking, deep black fabric with crimson and emerald threading, the crests of Potter, Black, and Slytherin embroidered in silver at his chest. Not ostentatious. Powerful. The robes of someone who didn't need to prove anything because the proof was in the wearing. Daphne had coached him for 2 days straight. Wisengamot procedure, voting blocks, who owed whom, who hated whom, where the bodies were buried, metaphorically and, in the case of some older families, literally. Malfoy will challenge you within the first 10 minutes, she'd said, pacing his sitting room with the focused energy of a general before battle. He'll frame it as a point of order, questioning the legitimacy of the Slytherin claim. He needs to do it publicly because his entire political identity rests on being the closest thing to Slytherin's heir in the Wizengamot. And he's not. Never was. He knows that. But perception is power in that chamber. If he can make even a third of the members doubt your claim, he can delay your seating for months while a committee investigates. Those months give Voldemort time to consolidate. So I don't give him the chance to build doubt. Exactly. You go in with the magic verified, the Gringotts documentation in hand, and you make it so obvious that challenging you would look like challenging gravity. Now, standing in his chambers, Harry checked the 3 rings one final time. They pulsed against his fingers, steady, sure. Ready. Ron and Hermione were waiting in the entrance hall when he came down. Ron in his best dress robes, not the nightmare lace ones from the Yule Ball but something new that Harry had insisted on buying, deep blue and well-fitted. Hermione in smart wizarding attire that split the difference between muggle and magical with her usual practical elegance. You look terrifying, Ron said approvingly. Good terrifying or bad terrifying? Don't mess with me, I own a castle, terrifying. Hermione fussed with his collar for exactly 2 seconds before he gently batted her hands away. Remember, she said, if Malfoy invokes precedent of, Hermione. I've got this. She bit her lip, nodded, and stepped back. Daphne was waiting outside, dressed in Greengrass family formal wear, silver and deep forest green. She'd be in the visitors' gallery, not on the floor, but her presence was strategic. Every pureblood in that chamber would see a Greengrass standing with Potter-Black-Slytherin, and the message would be unmistakable. Neville operated moments later. The Longbottom Lordship apparently came with a boost to magical confidence, because the boy who'd struggled with basic spells was now side-along operating his grandmother with casual ease. Augusta Longbottom looked like she'd swallowed something sour and magnificent simultaneously. Lord Potter-Black-Slytherin, Augusta said, and the title dripped with generations of pure blood gravity. My grandson tells me interesting things. All true, Lady Longbottom. She studied him with hawkish eyes, then gave a single sharp nod. Then House Longbottom stands with you today. As it has always stood with House Potter. Thank you. Their party took the floor from Hogsmeade, the 3 broomsticks fireplace connected to the ministry atrium, and Madame Rosmerta asked no questions when a lord of 3 houses stepped into her pub with an entourage. The ministry atrium was chaos. Word had leaked. Of course it had, secrets in the wizarding world lasted about as long as chocolate frogs in Ron's vicinity. Reporters swarmed the flue exits. Ministry workers had found excuses to linger. Aurors lined the walls in unusual numbers. Harry stepped out of the green flames and the atrium fell silent. It wasn't just his appearance, though that was striking enough. It was his presence. 3 lordship rings, fully active, radiating magical authority in a way that every witch and wizard in that space could feel like a physical pressure. People stepped back without meaning to. The fountain of magical brethren rippled as though responding to a disturbance in the magic of the building itself. Rita Skeeter materialized at his elbow with a quick quotes quill already scribbling. Lord Potter-Black-Slytherin. A comment for the Daily Prophet on your unprecedented, no comment today, Ms. Skeeter. Harry didn't slow down. You'll get your story from what happens in the chamber. But Lord Potter, he kept walking. Ron and Hermione flanked him, Neville and Augusta a step behind. Daphne had peeled off toward the visitor entrance, she'd be in position before the session began. The Wizengamot chamber was in the lowest level of the ministry, a cavernous circular room with tiered seating arranged around a central floor. Ancient, deliberate, designed to make whoever stood at the center feel the weight of every eye above them. The seats were filling rapidly, plum-robed members taking their places with the practiced bustle of politicians who smelled blood in the water. Harry spotted Lucius Malfoy immediately, platinum hair, aristocratic sneer, positioned in the upper tier with his block around him like a protective formation. Malfoy's eyes found Harry the instant he entered and something flickered in them. Not quite fear. But not the arrogant dismissal Harry was used to either. Good. He should be worried. Dumbledore sat in the chief warlock's seat, high above the floor, presiding but theoretically neutral. His eyes met Harry's across the chamber with an expression so carefully blank it might as well have been a billboard reading, "I have complicated feelings about this." Amelia Bones, head of the DMLE, square-jawed and formidable, sat to Dumbledore's left. Harry had received a note from her yesterday. Brief, professional, Lord Potter-Black-Slytherin. I look forward to your presentation. Justice first. He'd liked that. The 3 empty seats were obvious. Front row, center section, the most powerful position in the chamber, reserved for the oldest houses. The Potter seat with its crimson cushion. The black seat with its dark leather. And between them, a seat that had been empty so long that most members probably didn't even register it anymore, the Slytherin seat, carved from green-veined marble, bearing the serpent crest. Harry walked down the central aisle. Every head turned. Every conversation died. His boots echoed on ancient stone, and with each step he felt the building's magic, lesser than Hogwarts, younger and more rigid, but still magical, recognizing the weight he carried. He didn't stop at the speaker's position in the center. He walked directly to the 3 seats, turned to face the chamber, and remained standing. "Chief Warlock," he said, and his voice carried effortlessly in the acoustic design of the room. "I am Harry James Potter, Lord of the noble and most ancient house of Potter by blood right, Lord of the noble and most ancient house of Black by Godfather's will and blood adoption, and Lord of the noble and most ancient house of Slytherin by right of magical conquest. I claim these 3 seats and present my credentials." He raised his right hand. The Potter ring blazed crimson. Then his left, black onyx shining like a void, Slytherin emerald burning like dragonfire. The magic was visible, tangible, undeniable. Every person in that chamber felt it press against them like a change in air pressure. From the upper tier, Lucius Malfoy stood. "Right on schedule." "Point of order, Chief Warlock." Dumbledore inclined his head. "Lord Malfoy. I challenge the legitimacy of the Slytherin claim." Malfoy's voice was silk and poison, smooth as always. "The right of magical conquest has not been successfully invoked in over 3 centuries. There is no precedent for Gringotts documentation," Harry cut in. He hadn't raised his voice. Hadn't needed to. The chamber's magic amplified him perfectly. He produced a scroll from his robes, goblin-sealed, stamped with the Gringotts authentication that no wizard could forge. Blood verification, magical lineage trace, and conquest accumulation record. Verified by account manager Ragnarok personally. The magic is settled. The ring accepted me. Lord Malfoy is welcome to try on the Slytherin ring himself if he believes his claim is superior. Silence. The offer hung in the air like a blade. Every person in that chamber knew what happened when someone tried to wear a lordship ring they weren't entitled to. Best case, the ring rejected them violently. Worst case, it killed them. Malfoy's jaw tightened. "I am not challenging through personal claim. I am challenging on procedural grounds. The conquest right requires the defeat of the previous holder in magical combat." Harry tilted his head. October 31, 1981. Tom Marvolo Riddle, known as Lord Voldemort, attempted to kill me with the killing curse. His magic broke against mine. His body was destroyed. His power shattered. By every definition of magical combat recognized in wizarding law since the Compact of 1215, that was a defeat. He paused. I was 1 year old. Imagine what I can do now. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Harry felt the shift, attention converting to something closer to awe. Malfoy tried again. The entity in question survived. The defeat was not complete, Lord Malfoy. Amelia Bones's voice cut like a whip. Are you publicly acknowledging that he who must not be named survived? Because the Ministry's official position, your ally's official position, is that he never returned. The trap closed beautifully. Malfoy couldn't challenge the conquest right without admitting Voldemort survived, which contradicted the ministry position he and Fudge had spent a year building. He couldn't support the ministry position without undermining his own challenge. Harry watched the realization hit him, watched the pale face go a shade paler, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The challenge is withdrawn, Malfoy said through his teeth. Noted. Dumbledore's voice was neutral, but Harry caught the faintest glimmer in those blue eyes. Does any other member wish to challenge Lord Potter-Black-Slytherin's credentials? Silence. Heavy, absolute silence. Then I recognize Lord Harry James Potter-Black-Slytherin and welcome him to his seats. May his service honor these halls. Harry sat. 3 seats were technically his, but he chose the Slytherin one, another deliberate statement. He settled into the green-veined marble and it was warm under his hands, as though the stone itself had been waiting. From the visitors' gallery above, he caught Daphne's eye. She inclined her head fractionally, and the ghost of her sharp smile told him everything. Well played. The session continued, but the dynamics had shifted on their axis. Harry could feel it, alliances recalculating in real time, decades of power structures wobbling on their foundations. 11 seats that had voted as Malfoy's block for years were suddenly uncertain, their occupants glancing between the platinum-haired lord and the 15-year-old who just dismantled his challenge in 30 seconds. 2 hours in, Fudge called for a recess. Harry was fairly sure this was so the minister could panic privately. Harry used the recess to do something unexpected. He walked directly to the cluster of neutral members, the smaller houses, the fence-sitters, the families who'd survived by never committing fully to either side. They watched him approach with varying degrees of alarm. Ladies. Gentlemen. Harry nodded to the group. I'm new here. I'd like to listen. What matters to you? What has this body failed to address? The surprise on their faces was almost comical. A lord of 3 houses, asking them what they wanted. It was so far outside normal political behavior that most of them didn't know how to respond. One woman did. Elder Marchbanks, ancient, formidable, connected to the Wizarding Examination Authority. She studied Harry with rheumy eyes that missed nothing. You're either very clever or very naive, young man. Bit of both, probably. She cackled. At least you're honest. You want to know what matters to us. Funding. The Hogwarts endowment has been raided by 3 successive ministers. Teacher salaries haven't risen in 30 years. The hospital wing runs on donations. And the ministry takes a 20% tax on every magical business while returning nothing to education or infrastructure. Others chimed in. Trade restrictions that benefited old money at the expense of new businesses. The werewolf legislation that made it impossible for Remus Lupin and thousands like him to find work. The Muggleborn integration program that had been defunded 15 years ago. Orphanage standards. Cauldron thickness regulations that were a thinly veiled protectionist scheme for one manufacturer, owned, naturally, by a Malfoy subsidiary. Harry listened. Really listened. And when the recess ended and the session resumed, he stood and requested the floor. Lord Potter-Black-Slytherin. Dumbledore acknowledged him. I'd like to propose a motion. Harry stood at his seat rather than walking to the center, another break from tradition that had several members muttering. A full audit of the Hogwarts Endowment Fund, conducted by Gringotts rather than ministry accountants, with results published publicly. Fudge went purple. Now see here, is there a procedural objection? Harry asked Bones. None, she said crisply. The motion is in order. Any lord may call for an audit of funds connected to their estates. Hogwarts is connected to the Potter, Black, and Slytherin estates through the Founder's Charter. Then I call the vote. It passed. Not unanimously, Malfoy's bloc voted against, and Fudge's loyalists followed, but the neutral members Harry had just spoken with voted in favor, and combined with the progressive bloc and Dumbledore's allies, it was enough. A small victory. but the first crack in the dam. After the session, Harry found himself cornered in the atrium by someone he hadn't expected, Narcissa Malfoy. She approached alone, without her husband, which was itself a statement. Elegant as always, pale and perfect and cold as a January morning. But there was something in her eyes that wasn't cold at all. Something desperate, barely controlled. Lord Black, she said, using only that title. Deliberately. Harry studied her. The castle wasn't here to read her intent for him, but he'd learned to trust his own instincts. Lady Malfoy. She stopped. Glanced around. Ministry workers flowed past them, but none close enough to hear. Might I speak with you privately? Not today. But soon. About? My son. The mask cracked, just barely. Narcissa Malfoy, née Black, and there it was. She wasn't approaching as a Malfoy. She was approaching as a Black, reaching out to her new lord. Lucius is pushing him toward, she stopped again, composure reasserting itself. Please. Harry read the subtext with a clarity that surprised him. Draco. The dark mark. Narcissa terrified for her child and unable to stop her husband's ambitions. Tomorrow, he said. Grimmauld Place. You know the address, it's your family home. I'll lower the Fidelius for you. The relief that flooded her face was raw and immediate and gone almost as quickly, hidden behind pureblood composure. Thank you, Lord Black. She turned and walked away, spine straight, heels clicking. Lucius was waiting by the flue exits. Harry watched their reunion, watched Narcissa take her husband's arm with practiced ease, watched Lucius's eyes flick to Harry with poorly concealed fury. Let him be furious. Let him wonder what his wife had said. Let the paranoia eat him alive. Ron appeared at Harry's elbow. Was that Narcissa Bloody Malfoy? It was. What did she want? To save her son, I think. Harry rolled his shoulders. The weight of 3 lordship robes was nothing compared to the weight of the day's politics. Come on. Let's go home. Hogwarts? Yeah. Harry smiled. Home. They fled back to Hogsmeade and walked up to the castle in the golden late afternoon light. Ron and Hermione flanked him, Neville just behind. Augusta had gone home, satisfied that her grandson was in good hands. Halfway up the path, Harry stopped. Something was wrong. Not at the castle was fine, alert, angry. Its wards were intact but bristling, like a dog with its hackles raised. Harry closed his eyes and reached out through the sovereign bond, felt along the boundary of the grounds, there. At the edge of the forbidden forest. 3 magical signatures that didn't belong. Dark, furtive, trying to find gaps in the wardline. We have visitors, Harry said quietly. Ron's wand was in his hand instantly. Where? Forest edge. 3 people. They're testing the wards. Harry opened his eyes and smiled, that sharp smile that was becoming more natural every day. They're about to be very disappointed. He reached out with his will, not his wand, just his will, and told the castle what he wanted. The response was immediate. Beneath the intruder's feet, the ground liquefied. Not dangerously, Harry wasn't trying to kill them. Just enough to trap them ankle-deep as the earth resolidified, locking them in place like insects in amber. Then the trees moved. The Forbidden Forest was part of Hogwarts grounds, part of the ward structure, and with a sovereign actively directing it, the ancient trees leaned inward like curious spectators, their branches interweaving to form a cage around the 3 trapped figures. That's, Hermione stared. You did that from here? The castle did it. I just asked. Harry was already walking toward the forest edge, his friends hurrying to keep pace. As they approached, the details resolved, 3 figures in dark robes, masked, struggling against their earthen bonds with increasing panic. Death Eaters. Testing the wards for weaknesses, likely on Voldemort's orders. Harry stopped 10 feet away and regarded them with detached curiosity. Evening. One of them, the largest, snarled behind his mask. Release us. You have no right, I have every right. You're on my grounds. Literally. Harry cocked his head. Who sent you? Actually, don't bother, I know who sent you. The question is whether you're going to tell me anything useful or whether I should just hand you to the DMLE and let them sort it out. The Dark Lord will, the Dark Lord, Harry said, and his voice dropped to something cold and quiet, has no claim here. Not anymore. Whatever he felt when I took the Slytherin ring, and I know he felt it, should have told him that. Hogwarts is mine. The Slytherin legacy is mine. And anyone he sends against these walls is going to end up exactly like you, trapped, helpless, and waiting for the orders. He reached out and pulled the mask off the nearest one. McNair, Harry recognized the heavy jaw and cruel eyes. The man snarled at him, but there was fear underneath it. Real fear. The second was someone Harry didn't recognize, a younger man, mid-20s maybe, with the look of a recent recruit. And the third, Harry pulled the mask free and stared into the terrified face of a teenager. Couldn't be more than 17. Pale, sweating, shaking. Merlin's beard, Ron muttered. He's recruiting kids. The boy's eyes darted between them, wild with panic. Please, I didn't want to, my father said I had to, please, I'm not, what's your name? Harry asked, his voice gentler now. T. Theodore. Theodore Knott. Daphne had mentioned the Knotts. Father a confirmed Death Eater, inner circle. Son, uncertain. Possibly coerced. Possibly complicit. Daphne had said she didn't know which. Now Harry did. Theodore. Harry crouched to eye level. Did your father make you take the mark? The boy's sleeve rode up as he struggled, and there it was, the dark mark, vivid and recent, the skin around it still inflamed. His eyes filled with tears he was clearly furious about. Last month. I didn't, he held me down and, Harry, Hermione said softly behind him. I see it. Harry stood. Right. Here's what's going to happen. McNair, you go to the DMLE. So does your friend here. He looked at the unknown Death Eater, who glared back with impotent hatred. Not, you stay. You can't, McNair started. Harry didn't even look at him. He simply willed it, and the castle obliged. The earth around McNair and the other Death Eater rose, encapsulating them to the chest, and then moved, sliding them along the ground toward the edge of the wards like parcels on a conveyor belt. At the ward line, a Patronus message burst from the boundary, racing toward the ministry. The DMLE would be here in minutes. Knott stared after his companions, then back at Harry. What are you going to do with me? Give you a choice. Harry released the earth around Knott's ankles with a thought. The boy stumbled, nearly fell, caught himself. You can go with them. Face trial. Get sentenced for the mark on your arm regardless of how it got there, because the Wisengamot doesn't distinguish between willing and forced recruitment. Or you come inside. The castle's wards can suppress a dark mark, not remove it, but make it so he can't track you or summon you through it. You stay at Hogwarts under my protection while I figure out a more permanent solution. Harry held his gaze. But if you stay, you tell me everything you know. Every plan your father shared, every meeting you overheard. Everything. Knott looked at the castle. At Harry. At the rings on his fingers. At the trees still arched overhead, watching. You'd protect me, he said slowly. Even though you're a kid whose father is a monster. I know something about bad guardians. Harry extended a hand. Choose. Knott stared at the offered hand. Then, with the desperation of someone grabbing a lifeline, he took it. The moment their hands clasped, the castle's wards surged. Harry felt them reach out, wrap around Nott's magical signature like a blanket smothering a flame, and the dark mark on the boy's arm went from angry red to dull gray. Nott gasped, his whole body sagging. I can't feel him anymore. Tears were running openly now, and Nott seemed past caring. For a month I've felt him in my head, pulling, and now it's quiet. Welcome to Hogwarts, Harry said. 3 days later, Umbridge arrived. Harry had been expecting her. Daphne's intelligence was impeccable, and the ministry's personnel assignments were barely confidential. But knowing she was coming and actually seeing her walk through the Hogwarts gates were two different experiences. He felt her enter the wards and immediately understood something the castle was telling him: this woman meant harm. Not physical harm, her magic wasn't strong enough for that, but institutional harm. She carried documents in her pink handbag that were designed to dismantle the school's autonomy piece by piece. The wards tasted her intent and recoiled. Harry was in the Great Hall when she arrived, sharing lunch with Neville and Daphne, who'd taken up semi-permanent residence in the castle, working through the political landscape for the upcoming sessions. Ron and Hermione were in the library, predictably. Theodore Nott was in a guest room on the 4th floor, sleeping more than he was awake as his body recovered from a month of dark mark exposure. The doors of the Great Hall opened and Professor McGonagall led in a short, squat woman in a pink cardigan, with a face like a toad and a smile like a paper cut. "Mr. Potter," Umbridge simpered. "How delightful. I had heard you were staying at the school over summer. How irregular." Harry didn't stand. He noticed McGonagall's lips thin at the woman's tone, but his deputy headmistress said nothing. They discussed this. "Let Umbridge reveal herself." "Professor Umbridge," Harry said, perfectly pleasant. "Welcome to Hogwarts." "Oh, I'm not a professor yet, dear." Actually, you're not a professor at all. You're the ministry's appointed defense against the dark arts instructor. But this is a school, so I suppose we'll use the title." He returned to his lunch. "I hope you find your rooms comfortable." Something flickered in Umbridge's eyes, confusion at his dismissiveness, maybe. She'd expected, what? Fear? Deference? She'd get neither. "I shall need to speak with the headmaster about certain arrangements," she said, her smile tightening. "Ministry business, you understand. Dumbledore's in his office. You know the way." Harry took a bite of his sandwich. Umbridge stood there for a moment, clearly expecting more. When nothing came, she turned in a swirl of pink and marched out. McGonagall lingered. "She has 3 educational decrees in that bag," McGonagall murmured. "Ready to implement." "I know." Harry smiled. "Let her try." Daphne, who'd watched the exchange with sharp attention, leaned forward once McGonagall left. "You're going to let her issue the decrees?" "I'm going to let her try to implement them." "There's a difference." "Explain." "She can pass whatever laws she wants in the ministry. She can waive whatever parchment she likes. But enforcing those decrees requires the castle's cooperation. Classroom doors need to open for her. The wards need to recognize her authority." Harry tapped the table. "They won't. Not without my permission. And I'm not giving it." Neville was grinning. "So she'll have the legal authority to inspect teachers, but the classroom doors will stick. The staircases will redirect her. The portraits will give her wrong directions. The room of requirement won't appear." Harry shrugged. "Hogwarts is a very old building. Things malfunction." Daphne stared at him for a long moment, then laughed, a real laugh, not her sharp political smile but something warmer. "You're going to let the castle bully her." "I'm going to let the castle exercise its ancient right to refuse uninvited guests." Umbridge was appointed by the ministry, not hired by the headmaster. The castle knows the difference. It took exactly 4 hours. The first educational decree, granting the High Inquisitor authority to inspect teaching staff, was posted on the notice board in the entrance hall. Harry watched it happen, felt the castle's irritation like an itch between his shoulder blades. He soothed it. Wait, he told the ancient magic. Not yet. The second decree, giving the High Inquisitor power to dismiss teachers, went up beside the first. Harry felt McGonagall's fury from 3 floors away. The third decree, banning student organizations not approved by the High Inquisitor. Harry stood up from his desk and said, "No." The parchment burst into flames on the notice board. Not dramatic flames. Just a clean, blue-white fire that consumed the third decree and left the notice board completely undamaged. The first 2 decrees remained. Harry was picking his battles deliberately. Let her inspect. Let her threaten to dismiss. But student organizations were the seat of Dumbledore's army, and he would not let her prevent his people from gathering. Umbridge came running. Harry heard her, felt her through the wards, huffing down the corridor in her horrible pink heels. What happened? She stared at the scorch mark where the third decree had been. Who did this? Harry stepped out of the shadows of the entrance hall. He hadn't been hiding, he'd just been standing still, and the castle's lighting had cooperated with him. The castle rejected your decree, Professor. The castle, buildings don't reject ministry edicts. This one does. Harry walked toward her, and the torches brightened around him as he moved, a subtle effect, but unmistakable. Hogwarts predates the ministry by 5 centuries. It has its own governance, its own rules, its own magic. You're welcome to teach here. You're welcome to inspect. The first 2 decrees are perfectly reasonable. But you will not prevent students from gathering. The founders built this place for education, and that includes education the ministry doesn't approve of. Umbridge's face had gone from pink to white to a mottled purple that clashed horribly with her cardigan. You are a student. You have no authority to. I'm the Lord of 3 houses, 2 of which are represented on the Board of Governors, and 1 of which founded this school. Harry didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. And the castle agrees with me. You're welcome to post the decree again. It'll burn again. As many times as you like. She drew her wand. It was such a monumentally stupid thing to do that Harry almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Drawing a wand on the Sovereign of Hogwarts inside Hogwarts was like drawing a knife on the ocean while standing in it. Every suit of armor in the entrance hall turned its head toward her. Every portrait went silent. The torches dimmed everywhere except around Harry, making him the only bright point in a suddenly dark and hostile corridor. I'd put that away, Harry said quietly, if I were you. Umbridge looked around. At the armor. At the watching portraits. At the stones beneath her feet, which had begun to vibrate with a low, warning hum. Her wand hand trembled. She lowered it. This isn't over, she hissed. The minister will hear about this. Tell him whatever you like. And tell him that when he sends his next representative, they should come with respect instead of chains. Harry turned his back on her, deliberately, dismissively, and walked away. The torches returned to normal in his wake, and behind him, he heard the rapid click of Umbridge's heels retreating. McGonagall was waiting around the corner. She'd watched the whole thing, he realized. Potter, she said, and her voice was very carefully controlled. That was, too much. Magnificent. She straightened her spectacles. Don't tell anyone I said that. That night, Harry dreamed. Not the Voldemort dreams, those were gone, severed completely when the Horcrux burned away. This was something else. The castle dreaming through him, or perhaps sharing its memories. He saw Hogwarts being built. 4 figures, younger than he'd imagined, barely into middle age, standing on a bare hilltop in the Scottish Highlands. Godric, broad and laughing, driving the first foundation stone into the earth with his sword. Rowena, precise and focused, drawing ward schemes in the air with her wand. Helga, steady and strong, calling the earth to rise in walls. And Salazar, thin, dark-eyed, intense, weaving the ley lines into the foundation like a spider building a web. They'd been friends. The dream showed that clearly, the easy way they moved around each other, the laughter, the arguments that ended in better ideas. Before the schism, before history simplified them into caricatures, they'd been four people with a shared vision and different strengths. The dream shifted. He saw the castle grow, years compressed into moments. Towers rising, grounds expanding, the room of requirement being enchanted by all four founders together, will make it respond to need, Helga said, because need is honest. The Chamber of Secrets being built, not originally as a weapon or a hiding place, but as a foundation. A root cellar for the castle's magic, maintained by the basilisk as a guardian. Then the fracture. Salazar leaving. The others sealing his quarters, his legacy, his contributions slowly being written out of the story. And the castle, mourning. A deep structural grief that manifested as cold stones and wandering staircases and doors that led nowhere, a building confused and hurt by the loss of a quarter of its purpose. Harry woke with tears on his face and the absolute certainty that one of the first things he needed to do as sovereign was heal that ancient wound. He lay in the dark, the castle humming around him, aware that he was awake, attentive, waiting. He pressed his palm flat against the wall beside his bed. "I'm going to fix it," he whispered. "What they broke between them. I'm going to fix it." The stones warmed beneath his hand, and he felt something that was too vast and ancient to be called gratitude but was shaped like it. Morning brought news that changed the political landscape again. Hermione burst into breakfast, actually running, which she never did, with a copy of the Daily Prophet that she slapped down in front of Harry with such force that his tea sloshed. "Front page," she gasped. Dark Lord confirmed, Ministry reverses position. Minister Fudge admits he who must not be named has returned. Potter-Black-Slytherin vindicated. Harry scanned the article. Fudge, confronted with the Wizengamot record of Malfoy's accidental confirmation during the Lordship challenge, had been unable to maintain the denial. The opposition bloc had forced a vote of confidence. Fudge had survived, barely, but only by reversing course entirely. "He threw Malfoy under the night bus," Daphne said, reading over Harry's shoulder. She sounded delighted. "Look, paragraph 6. The minister expressed deep concern about certain members of the Wizengamot who may have misled the government regarding the Dark Lord's return. He's positioning Malfoy as the source of the cover-up." "Can Malfoy recover?" Harry asked. "Politically? Maybe. He's survived worse. But his credibility is damaged and his bloc will be shaken. Several of those 11 votes were loyal because Malfoy represented stability and ministry access. If he's out of favor with Fudge, even temporarily, they'll look for new patrons." She looked at Harry meaningfully. "I'm not buying political allies. You don't have to buy them. You just have to be visible, powerful, and winning. People follow strength. You showed strength in the Wizengamot. You showed it again with Umbridge. Keep showing it and they'll come to you." Harry nodded slowly. "What about Voldemort?" Fudge confirming his return changes the playing field. "It does. The Aurors can mobilize officially now. The Order of the Phoenix won't have to operate in shadows. And," Daphne hesitated. "And Voldemort will escalate. Because his biggest advantage was everyone pretending he didn't exist." "Yes." Harry looked at the 3 rings on his fingers. Felt the castle around him, alert and ready. Thought about the ley lines Neville was working to heal, the Horcruxes still waiting to be destroyed, the allies still gathering. "Then we'd better be ready for what comes next." As if in answer, the Slytherin ring pulsed, a sharp, urgent pulse that Harry had learned to associate with the connection Voldemort no longer had to his scar but still had, distantly, to the Slytherin bloodline. The Dark Lord had felt the Ministry's confirmation. Had felt his political cover evaporate. And he was furious. Somewhere out in Britain, the snake was stirring. Harry closed his hand into a fist and felt the rings blaze. Let him come. Chapter 4, what the Dark Lord fears. The attack came on a Saturday. Not at Hogwarts. Voldemort wasn't stupid enough for that, not yet, not with the wards fully awake and a sovereign inside them. He chose Hogsmeade. The village that existed in Hogwarts' shadow but outside its direct protection. The village full of students on a weekend visit, laughing and buying sweets and completely unaware that they were bait. Harry felt it before it happened. He was in the Great Hall, reviewing the Gringotts audit results with Hermione. The numbers were damning. 3 ministers had siphoned from the Hogwarts endowment, when the Slytherin ring went cold on his finger. Not a pulse this time. A chill that crept up his arm and settled in his chest like a premonition. He stood so abruptly his chair scraped stone. Harry. Hermione looked up. Hogsmeade. He was already moving, reaching out through the sovereign bond, feeling the castle's awareness extend to its boundaries. He could sense the village, not clearly, not the way he felt the castle's interior, but enough. Enough to feel the anti-apparition wards being erected around the village by hostile magic. Enough to feel the cold pressure of dozens of magical signatures appearing at its edges, surrounding it. They're attacking Hogsmeade. Right now. Students are there, it's a visit day. Hermione's face went white. How many? Dozens. Death Eaters. And, the chill deepened. He's there. Voldemort himself. The castle reacted to Harry's surge of adrenaline like a war machine spinning up. Torches flared. Doors slammed open along corridors leading to exits. The suits of armor along the entrance hall drew their swords with a unified ring of steel. Portraits began shouting warnings, relaying the alert to every occupied room in the building. Ron burst through the great hall doors with Neville right behind him, both already armed. We heard, the portraits, Hogsmeade. Now. Harry was striding toward the entrance, and the castle was reshaping around him as he moved, the fastest route, doors appearing where there were none, corridors shortening. Ron, Neville, with me. Hermione, if you say, stay here, I will hex you myself. I was going to say get McGonagall and every teacher who can fight. Bring them to Hogsmeade's east entrance. I need you coordinating, not charging, you're the best tactical mind I have. She hesitated for half a breath, then nodded sharply and sprinted toward the staff quarters. Daphne appeared from the corridor leading to the dungeons, wand in hand, Theodore not behind her looking terrified but determined. We're coming, she said. Not a request. Daphne, half of Slytherin House is in that village today. My sister is in that village. Her eyes blazed with the cold fire he'd come to recognize as Daphne Greengrass at her most dangerous. We're coming. Harry didn't waste time arguing. Stay behind me until we're through the wards. Then do what you do best, get the students organized and moving toward the castle. Not, you know what Death Eaters look like from the inside. Help Daphne identify who's who. They ran. Through the entrance hall, down the front steps, across the grounds. Harry could feel the castle straining after him, wanting to help, unable to reach beyond its boundaries. He pushed his awareness forward as they ran, mapping the assault. The anti-apparition wards around Hogsmeade were crude but effective, designed to trap, not protect. Death Eaters at every exit point. The attack had already begun, he could hear screams now, faint on the wind, and see the glow of spellfire over the village rooftops. At the edge of the Hogwarts grounds, Harry stopped. The ward line hummed under his feet, the boundary of his domain. Beyond it, he was just a wizard, powerful, yes, but without the castle's direct support. Except Rowena's echo. The castle is a nexus. Every ley line in Britain passes through or near these grounds. The land will answer you, not just the building. Harry pressed his boot into the earth and reached. Not for the castle's wards, for what ran beneath them. The ley lines. The ancient network of magical energy that threaded through the Scottish Highlands like veins of gold and granite. Hogwarts was the nexus, the heart, but the lines extended outward in every direction. including directly beneath Hogsmeade. The connection snapped into place like a key turning. Not as strong as inside the castle, rawer, wilder, harder to control. But there. The land knew him. The earth recognized its sovereign. "Hold on to something," Harry said, and stepped across the wardline. The others followed. They covered the distance to the village at a flat run, Harry in front, the 3 rings blazing on his hands, the ley line energy flowing up through the ground into his legs with every stride. He felt faster, stronger, more present than he'd ever been. The land was feeding him. They hit the village boundary and found the first Death Eaters, 4 of them, guarding the road in, masks white against the grey morning. They saw Harry coming and raised their wands. Harry didn't slow down. Didn't draw his wand. He swept his left hand, the hand wearing the black and Slytherin rings, and the road beneath the Death Eaters erupted. Not violently enough to kill, thick pillars of packed earth shooting upward, catching them in the chest, launching them backward and away. They hit the ground 30 feet back and didn't get up. Ron let out a noise that was half laugh, half disbelief. "Bloody hell, mate. Keep moving." Hogsmeade was chaos. The main street was a war zone, shop windows shattered, the 3 broomsticks on fire, hexes lighting the air in green and red. Students were running, screaming, some fighting back. Harry spotted a cluster of 7th years holding a defensive position behind an overturned cart, trading spells with 6 Death Eaters who were advancing steadily. Harry stepped into the street and the cobblestones rippled outward from his feet like water. The Death Eaters felt it, something in the ground shifting, the magic of the land itself turning hostile. 2 of them stumbled. One looked down and saw the stones moving, reforming, rising around his ankles. Harry flicked his wand, he'd drawn it now, the holly and phoenix feather singing in his grip, and sent a wave of stunners that hit like hammers. 3 Death Eaters dropped. The other 3 tried to scatter and found that the alley they'd aimed for had closed, the buildings on either side leaning together, stonework meeting stonework, sealing the exit. Neville was right behind him, and whatever the Longbottom Lordship had awakened in him was fully active now. The earth moved for Neville too, differently than for Harry, more organic, less forceful. Vines erupted from between cobblestones, thick as wrists, wrapping around Death Eater legs. Tree roots punched through packed earth to trip and snare. The very vegetation of the village was rising against the attackers. "Get the students moving." Harry shouted to Daphne, and she was already gone, sprinting toward the cluster of terrified 3rd years huddled in Honeydook's doorway, her wand up, her voice carrying clear commands. Nott was with her, his face grim but focused, pointing out Death Eaters to avoid, identifying gaps in their formation. Ron had engaged 2 Death Eaters directly, pure combat magic, fast and brutal, the kind of spellwork that came from growing up with 6 siblings and training with Harry for a year. He wasn't flashy but he was relentless, pressing forward with shield and hex in rapid alternation until one of his opponents made a mistake and caught a body bind between the eyes. Harry moved deeper into the village. The ley line pulsed beneath him with every step, feeding his awareness, showing him the shape of the battle. 43 Death Eaters in total. 27 students scattered through the village. Madame Rosmerta unconscious behind her bar. 2 Aurors, the ones who'd been on village patrol, down, possibly dead. And at the center of it all, in the village square, a presence like a wound in the world. Cold, terrible, furious. Voldemort. Harry walked toward him. Not ran. Walked. The cobblestones stilled beneath his feet, no more rippling, no more defensive earth magic. Instead, the ley line energy gathered around him like a cloak, visible now as faint golden light tracing patterns on his skin, spiraling up his arms, concentrated in the 3 rings that blazed like stars on his fingers. The Death Eaters between Harry and the square saw him coming and fled. Not all of them, some were too committed, too fanatical, too stupid. Those met the same fate as the others, earth and stone and magic batting them aside like an irritated giant swatting flies. Harry didn't slow for them. didn't even look at them directly. His attention was fixed on the center. He emerged into the village square and there he was. Lord Voldemort stood beside the village fountain, which had gone dry, the water frozen solid despite the warm September day. He was taller than Harry remembered, skeletally thin, his red eyes burning in that noseless white face. Nagini coiled around his feet, massive and dark and radiating her own kind of malevolence. Around them, a ring of senior Death Eaters, Bellatrix, wild-eyed and grinning. Dolohov, scarred and cold. Rookwood, calculating. 6 others Harry recognized from the Department of Mysteries. And between the Death Eaters and Voldemort, on her knees, one snapped, blood running from a cut on her forehead, Astoria Greengrass. 13 years old. A hostage. Harry stopped at the edge of the square. The golden light around him pulsed steadily, illuminating the grey morning like a second sun. "Tom," he said. Voldemort's head turned. Those red eyes fixed on Harry, and what was in them was not the cold superiority Harry remembered from the graveyard. It was rage. Pure, consuming, personal rage. "You dare," Voldemort whispered, and his voice carried the way Harry's did, magic amplifying it, but where Harry's was warm stone and ancient foundations, Voldemort's was cold void and hunger. "You dare claim what is mine. Nothing here is yours. Nothing was ever yours." Harry didn't move. Didn't need to. He could feel the ley line directly beneath the square, one of the major branches, thick with power, flowing straight back to Hogwarts. "You're a pretender, Tom. A half-blood orphan who stole a legacy he never earned. Sound familiar? Except I didn't steal mine. I won it." Voldemort's lipless mouth twisted. "The Slytherin line is mine by blood, blood you spilled. Blood you corrupted. Blood you tore apart to make your pathetic anchors." Harry raised his left hand, and the Slytherin ring flared, emerald light so intense it threw shadows across the square. "The magic disagrees with you. The ring disagrees. And honestly, Tom, I disagree." "Kill him," Voldemort said. Every Death Eater in the ring raised their wands and fired. 10 killing curses, green death streaking across the square from every direction simultaneously. No way to dodge. No way to shield against them. A killing box designed to be inescapable. Harry stamped his foot. The ground exploded upward, not earth this time but the cobblestones themselves, ancient granite that had been laid by wizards 1,000 years ago, infused with centuries of ambient magic. They rose in a dome around Harry, a hemisphere of interlocking stone that the killing curses struck and broke against. Not deflected. Not absorbed. Broken. The Avada Kedavra shattered on stone that was channeling the ley line's raw power, and the green light dispersed into harmless sparks. The dome collapsed outward, the stones flying like shrapnel, and 3 Death Eaters went down before they could shield. Harry stepped through the dust and his wand moved like water. Stunner, Rookwood dropped. Cutting Curse, Dolohov's wand hand opened and his weapon clattered away. Chain Lightning Hex, 2 more fell, convulsing. Bellatrix screamed and charged, not retreating but attacking, wild curse after wild curse. Harry batted them aside with a shield that he barely had to think about, the ley line fed his magic faster than he could spend it, and sent back a blasting hex that caught her in the shoulder and spun her like a top. She hit the fountain and slumped. 6 seconds. 6 seconds and Voldemort's inner circle was scattered. Only the Dark Lord himself remained standing. And Nagini. And Astoria, still on her knees, too terrified to move. Voldemort's rage had transformed into something else, something calculating and far more dangerous. He looked at the fallen Death Eaters, at Harry blazing with golden light, at the Slytherin ring on his hand, and his expression went utterly cold. "Impressive," Voldemort said. "The ley lines. Salazar's old trick. I never mastered it, but then, the ring never accepted me." Something flickered in those red eyes. I will enjoy prying it from your dead finger. Let the girl go, Tom. Or what? Voldemort's wand pressed against the top of Astoria's head. She whimpered. Come now, boy. You've demonstrated your power over stone and earth. But can you outrun the killing curse at this range? Can your precious ley line save her before I speak 2 words? Harry went still. The golden light didn't dim, if anything it intensified, but his advance halted. Astoria's eyes found his, huge and terrified, and she was shaking so badly her teeth chattered. That's what I thought. Voldemort smiled, that terrible lipless smile. For all your power, Potter, you're still a child playing at Sovereign. The word came from Harry's mouth, but it resonated with something more, the castle, impossibly far away yet connected through the ley line like a nerve to a brain. The word carried authority, the kind embedded in stone and time and 1,000 years of magical law. I am Sovereign of Hogwarts. And you are threatening one of my students on land connected to my domain. Voldemort's sneer didn't waver. Pretty words. The castle is a mile away, boy. You have the ground beneath Nagini opened. Not slowly. Not with warning. One instant the snake was coiled on solid cobblestone, and the next the earth swallowed her, a pit opening and closing like a mouth, stone jaws slamming shut with a sound like a thunderclap. The serpent's hiss was cut off mid-sound. Voldemort spun, shock breaking through his composure for the first time. Nagini, Harry moved. Not toward Voldemort, toward Astoria. The golden light around him condensed, accelerated, and he crossed the 10 feet between them faster than should have been possible. His hand closed around her arm and he pulled her sideways, pulled her through a fold in space that the ley line offered him, a shortcut in reality itself, and deposited her 15 feet away behind a chunk of fallen fountain. Voldemort's killing curse hit empty air where she'd been. Harry straightened, standing between the Dark Lord and the girl, and raised his wand. Your snake is alive, he said. Trapped. 20 feet underground in a stone chamber the earth just made. She'll stay there until I decide otherwise. He paused. You want her back? Leave. Take your Death Eaters and go. Voldemort stood very still. His chest was heaving, not from exertion but from something Harry recognized as barely controlled panic. Nagini. His last Horcrux that Harry could reach without invading wherever he'd hidden the locket and cup. His insurance policy, his immortality backup, trapped underground by magic he couldn't counter because it wasn't ward magic or combat magic, it was the land itself, answering a claim older than any Dark Lord. This isn't over, Voldemort said. The same words Umbridge had used, Harry noted with grim amusement. The refuge of the outmaneuvered. No, Harry agreed. It isn't. But today is. Leave. Voldemort's red eyes burned with hatred so pure it was almost admirable. Then his gaze flicked down, to the ground where Nagini was trapped, and Harry saw the calculation. Could he dig her out? Fight Harry for access? Risk his Horcrux in open battle against someone channeling a ley line nexus? No. He couldn't. And he knew it. Voldemort raised his wand, not to attack. To summon. The fallen Death Eaters vanished in swirls of dark smoke, portkeyed away by some prearranged emergency measure. Bellatrix, Dolohov, all of them, yanked away between one blink and the next. Voldemort himself remained a moment longer. His eyes locked with Harry's across the ruined square. You cannot hold her forever, he said softly. And when she is free, I will burn everything you love. You've been trying that since I was 1 year old, Harry said. You're not very good at it. Something like fury, something like respect, something like fear crossed that white face. Then Voldemort turned on the spot and vanished with a crack that shattered every remaining window in the square. Silence. Then, noise. Running footsteps, shouts, crying. The battle was over. The Death Eaters at the village perimeter were fleeing or being caught by the teachers who'd arrived, McGonagall leading a charge of staff members who'd come through the east entrance exactly as Harry had directed. Aurors were operating in now that the anti-apparition ward had collapsed with Voldemort's departure. Harry's knees buckled. Not from injury, from the sudden withdrawal of the ley line energy. He'd been running on it like an engine on fuel, and now that the immediate threat was gone, his body was reminding him that he was 15 years old and had just channeled enough magical energy to level a building. Every muscle shook. His vision swam. Ron was there. When had Ron? Hands gripping his shoulders, steadying him. Easy, mate. Easy. I've got you. Students, Harry managed. Are they? Everyone's accounted for. Daphne got them organized. She's incredible in a crisis, by the way, and Neville held the north end of the village by himself. He grew a bloody wall of thorns across the street. 8 feet tall. Astoria, here. Daphne's voice, tight with controlled emotion. She was behind Harry, kneeling beside her sister, arms wrapped around the shaking girl. Astoria was crying, great heaving sobs, but she was alive. Unharmed. Safe. Is she? She's fine. She's fine because of you. Daphne's voice cracked on the last word. She looked up at Harry over her sister's head and there was nothing cold in her expression now. Nothing political. Just raw, ferocious gratitude. Thank you. Harry nodded. His vision was graying at the edges. Ron. I need to sit down. Yeah, you do. Come on. Ron hauled him to the edge of the fountain, the broken one, where Bellatrix had impacted, and Harry sat heavily on the stone rim. Hermione appeared. She was breathing hard, a scratch on her cheek, but her eyes were sharp and assessing. Harry, the Horcrux. Nagini. You trapped her. Underground. She's alive, I need her alive for now, but she can't get out. Can he get her out? Harry closed his eyes, reached for the ley line connection. Faint now, he'd expended too much, but he could still feel the chamber he'd created. Solid stone, 20 feet down, sealed on all sides. The snake was thrashing inside it but the walls held. Not without coming back here in person and digging. Which means coming back into range of me and the ley line. He opened his eyes. He won't risk it. Not today. But we need to deal with her soon, before he finds another way. Basilisk venom. I'll need to go back to the castle. The chamber. Get a fawn. He tried to stand and the world tilted. Ron pushed him back down. Not now, you absolute lunatic. You just went toe-to-toe with Voldemort and used the entire Scottish Highlands as a weapon. You're sitting here for at least 10 minutes. Harry wanted to argue. But his body agreed with Ron, and his body was currently winning the vote. McGonagall strode into the square, robes singed, spectacles askew, expression thunderous. Behind her, Flitwick, tiny and fierce, still crackling with combat charms. Sprout, earthy and solid, already tending to wounded students with practiced efficiency. Snape, Harry blinked. Snape was there, black robes billowing, his face a mask of something. Not his usual contempt. Something more complicated. The potions master's dark eyes swept the square, took in the destruction, the fallen Death Eaters who hadn't been portkeyed away in time, the scorch marks and shattered stone, and finally settled on Harry. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Snape gave a single, almost imperceptible nod and turned away to help with the wounded. It was, Harry thought distantly, possibly the closest thing to respect Severus Snape had ever shown him. They carried him back to the castle. Harry protested this fact but Ron and Neville simply picked him up between them, an arm over each shoulder, and walked him home. The gates opened as they approached, the wards wrapping around them like a warm blanket, and Harry felt the castle's magic flood back into him the moment he crossed the boundary. Not healing, Exactly, more like recharging. The shaking subsided. His vision cleared. Strength returned in slow, steady waves. By the time they reached the entrance hall, he could walk on his own. By the time they reached his chambers, he felt almost normal, if normal included a bone-deep exhaustion that no amount of magical recharging could fake away. He slept for 14 hours. When he woke, it was to find half a dozen people in his sitting room and the smell of tea. Hermione had organized a war council in his absence, because of course she had. And the DMLE confirmed 17 Death Eater captures, she was saying as Harry emerged from the bedroom, rumpled and squinting. Another 6 dead, not from our side, from the collapsing buildings. The Aurors are calling it the most significant blow against Voldemort's forces since the First War. Morning, Harry said. Every head turned. Ron grinned. Hermione's shoulders dropped with relief. Neville nodded, solid, steady. Daphne looked up from a parchment covered in her precise handwriting and the faintest smile crossed her face. It's evening, she said. You slept through an entire day. Earned it. Harry dropped into his usual chair and the castle helpfully produced a cup of tea on the side table before anyone could offer. Catch me up. They did. 17 captures, including 3 Inner Circle members who'd been too injured to portkey. The Daily Prophet had gone absolutely mad. The headline was apparently, Boy Who defeats Dark Lord in open combat, which was sensationalist but not technically wrong. The Ministry was in an uproar. Fudge had been seen leaving his office at 2 in the morning, and rumors of a no-confidence vote were circulating. And Nagini? Harry asked. Still trapped. Neville leaned forward. I checked through the ley line, carefully. She's alive, still thrashing, but the chamber is holding. I reinforced it this morning, added root networks through the stone. She's not going anywhere. Good. I need to destroy her today. Before Voldemort regroups and tries something clever. The basilisk fangs are ready, Hermione said. I went into the Chamber of Secrets while you slept. At his look, she shrugged. I had Ron open it. Parseltongue isn't required when the castle wants it open, it just responded to my intent once I explained what I needed. I have 3 fangs, preserved in stasis. Harry stared at her. You went into the Chamber of Secrets. By yourself. With Ron. She almost fainted when she saw the skeleton, Ron said cheerfully. Then she measured it and took samples. Because she's Hermione. The basilisk is 60 feet long, Harry. The academic implications alone, she caught herself. Not the point. Fangs. Ready. When you are. Harry drank his tea, let the warmth of it settle in his stomach, and nodded. Now. Before I lose my nerve. You don't have nerve to lose, Ron said. That's sort of the problem. They went outside at dusk, Harry, Ron, Hermione, Neville. Daphne stayed with Astoria, who was sleeping in the hospital wing under Madame Pomfrey's care. The evening was cool and still, the sky fading from gold to purple over the lake. Harry found the spot. He could feel Nagini below, a dark knot of furious magical energy, thrashing and hissing and radiating the corruption of the Horcrux fragment she carried. The Slytherin ring reacted to her proximity, not with affinity but with revulsion. A perversion of the bloodlines magic, trapped in a serpent and forced to serve a pretender. Stand back, Harry said. He knelt and pressed both palms to the earth. The ley line answered immediately, eager, ready, as though it had been waiting for this. He reached down through 20 feet of solid stone and felt the chamber he'd created. Felt the snake inside, coiling and striking at walls that wouldn't give. Harry opened the chamber. Not all of it, just the top. A circle of earth rose like a column, lifting the trapped serpent to the surface in a cylinder of packed stone. Nagini erupted into the evening air, hissing with fury, her massive form uncoiling, and Harry drove the basilisk fang through her skull before she could strike. The scream was the same as the diadem. Worse, maybe, louder, more desperate, more aware. The fragment of Voldemort in Nagini was larger than the one in the diadem had been, and it fought. Dark smoke poured from the wound, the snake's body convulsing, the Horcrux trying to escape, trying to find purchase, the Slytherin ring flared. Not passively this time, actively, aggressively, hunting. The emerald light lanced out and struck the dark smoke like a spear. Harry felt the conquest rite activate, the same magic that had purged the fragment from his scar, and the Horcrux fragment shrieked as it was consumed. Unmade. Erased from existence. Nagini went still. The smoke dissipated. The basilisk fong dissolved in the venom it had delivered. Harry sat back on his heels, breathing hard. 2 down. Just the locket and the cup remained. That's 4 total, Hermione whispered. Diary, diadem, the one from your scar, and now Nagini. The ring Dumbledore destroyed makes 5. Only 2 left. The locket's at Grimmauld Place, Harry said. I'll summon it tomorrow. Lord Black has full authority over everything in that house. And the cup? Gringotts. Harry stood, wiped his hands on his trousers, and looked at the dead snake at his feet. I have an appointment with the goblins next week. 3 major accounts and a request to access the Lestrange vault for an item that was stolen from the Slytherin estate. He smiled grimly. They're going to love the paperwork. Ron was staring at the remains of Nagini. Harry. Mate. You just destroyed Voldemort's snake. He's going to feel that. Good. Harry turned back toward the castle. Let him feel it. Let him feel every single one being destroyed. Let him know exactly what's coming. The rings pulsed on his fingers. The castle hummed above them. And somewhere in Britain, Harry knew, a Dark Lord was screaming. The locket came easily. Harry stood in Grimmauld Place the next morning, the house responding to him with a fervor that made the Hogwarts connection look restrained. Every Black family artifact in the building yearned toward him, centuries of accumulated magical objects recognizing their lord. The locket was in Creature's den, hidden among hoarded treasures, and when Harry called for it, it flew to his hand like a summoned snitch. Heavy. Cold. Wrong. The Horcrux pulsed against his palm with a sickly heartbeat, trying to find purchase in his mind. The black ring shut it down instantly. A wall of pure Black family magic, old and dark in its own right but loyal, wrapped around the locket's influence and strangled it. Harry could hear the Horcrux whispering, fragments of Voldemort's voice, promises and threats, but they were muffled. Impotent. Like hearing someone shout through 6 feet of water. He set the locket on the kitchen table. Drew the second basilisk fong from the protective case Hermione had prepared. No drama. No hesitation. He stabbed downward, felt the fong pierce the gold casing, felt the venom surge into the Horcrux. The kitchen table cracked in half. The locket screamed, a sound like tearing metal and dying animals, and black liquid erupted from it, splattering the walls, hissing where it contacted surfaces. Harry held his ground, pressing the fong deeper, and the Slytherin ring blazed and the conquest rite burned and the fragment died. Silence. Harry stood in a kitchen covered in dark residue, holding a broken locket over a ruined table, and breathed. 5 down. 1 to go. Gringotts was, as predicted, delighted by the paperwork. Not delighted in a warm way, goblins didn't do warm. But they did respect power, wealth, and the proper exercise of ancient rights, and Harry walked into the bank as the holder of 3 of their oldest accounts, requesting access to a 4th vault on grounds of stolen property. The cup, Harry explained, belonged to the Slytherin estate. It had been entrusted to Helga Hufflepuff 1,000 years ago, a gift between founders, but remained Slytherin property by provenance. Bellatrix Lestrange had received it from Voldemort, who had no legal right to distribute Slytherin assets. The goblins deliberated for 20 minutes. Then Ragnarok, the senior account manager who'd handled Harry's lordship verification, smiled a smile full of pointed teeth and said, "The Lestrange vault is forfeit to you, Lord Slytherin. By rights of property claim and," he checked his notes, 17 outstanding fees owed by the Lestrange account to Gringotts, which your claim allows us to finally collect. "Happy to help," Harry said. They rode the carts down to the deep vaults. Harry destroyed the cup right there in the vault, basilisk fawing through gold, Horcrux screaming its death in the bowels of Gringotts while goblin guards watched with expressions of professional interest. 6 Horcruxes. All destroyed. Every fragment of Tom Riddle's shattered soul, gone. Voldemort was mortal. The news spread in ways Harry couldn't control and didn't try to. He hadn't announced it, hadn't held a press conference or published an article. But the magical world felt it. The same way they'd felt the pulse when the castle woke. A lightning. A lifting of something heavy that had pressed on the collective consciousness of wizarding Britain for decades. Dumbledore knew. Harry told him directly, in the headmaster's office, and watched the old man weep with something that looked like liberation. "It's done," Dumbledore whispered. "After all these years, all the searching, you did it in weeks. I had advantages you didn't." Harry sat across from him, and for the first time since claiming the sovereignty, there was no hostility between them. Just two people who wanted the same thing, separated by different methods and now united by result. The rings. The castle. The ley lines. You were working alone, in secret, with limited tools. I'm not going to pretend that wasn't brave. Dumbledore removed his spectacles and wiped his eyes. You're being kinder than I deserve. Probably. Harry allowed himself a small smile. But we're not done. He's mortal now, but he's still powerful. Still has followers. Still has decades of dark magic at his disposal. He'll be desperate. Yes. A desperate Voldemort is the most dangerous kind. I know. Harry leaned forward. Which is why I'm not going to wait for him to attack again. He hit Hogsmeade because he thought it was outside my reach. He learned otherwise. Now he's wounded, his Horcruxes destroyed, his snake dead, his forces depleted. He'll go to ground. Try to rebuild. And you want to finish it before he can. I want to finish it now. Harry met Dumbledore's eyes. No more prophecy. No more destiny. Just a mortal Dark Lord who needs to be stopped and a coalition with the power to do it. Dumbledore studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. What do you need? Tell me where he's hiding. I don't know precisely. But I have theories, and with the Horcruxes destroyed, there's no longer any reason to hold information back. Dumbledore stood, crossed to his pensieve, and drew a silvery thread from his temple. Shall we? They dove into memories together. Riddle Manor, where Voldemort had hidden once before. The caves where he'd stored the locket's decoy. Little Hangleton. The network of safe houses his Death Eaters maintained. Harry absorbed it all, cross-referencing with what Theodore Nott had told them, what Snape had reported in his double-agent capacity, Snape, whose position was now blown, who'd appeared at the battle and chosen his side openly, another conversation Harry needed to have. A picture emerged. Not complete, but close enough. Riddle Manor, Harry said. He'll go back to his father's house. He always does, it's the only place that was ever his, even if he hates the connection. I agree. Then that's where we go. Harry straightened. Not alone. Not charging in blindly. But soon. With everyone we have. Dumbledore looked at him, really looked, without the twinkle, without the mask, just an old man seeing a young one clearly for the first time. You know, he said quietly, I spent decades planning for this war. Positioning pieces, making sacrifices, accepting costs. And you've accomplished more in 3 weeks than I managed in 3 years. Not because you're more powerful, though you are, but because you simply refused to accept the constraints I'd built around the problem. You were trying to be clever. I'm just trying to win. Yes. A faint, genuine smile. How refreshing. Harry turned to leave, then paused. Dumbledore. After this, after Voldemort is gone. We need to talk about Hogwarts. About how it's run. About the things you let slide. I know. Good. Harry opened the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow we plan the assault. He left the office and walked through his castle, feeling it around him, alive and ready, ancient magic humming in every stone. The suits of armor stood at attention as he passed. The portraits watched with something like pride. The enchanted ceiling of the great hall showed stars despite the daylight outside, showing him the sky as it truly was, not filtered by atmosphere or time. Stars and possibility and the vast, open future. Voldemort was mortal. His followers were broken. His political cover had evaporated. And Harry Potter, Lord of Three Houses, Sovereign of Hogwarts, 15 years old and absolutely unafraid, was coming for him. Tomorrow. Chapter 5, Sovereign. The War Council met at dawn. Not in Dumbledore's office, in the Great Hall, because Harry wanted space and because the castle's magic was strongest here, pooled in the chamber where 1,000 years of students had gathered. The enchanted ceiling showed a sky of iron gray, clouds rolling in from the north, and the torches along the walls burned steady and bright. They filled the head table and spilled beyond it. Dumbledore at one end, McGonagall beside him. Moody, both eyes fixed on Harry with something between suspicion and fierce approval. Kingsley Shacklebolt, solid as a mountain. Tonks, her hair shifting between colors with nervous energy. Lupin, looking healthier than Harry had ever seen him, the ley line energy that suffused the castle seemed to ease whatever the wolf did to his body between moons. Flitwick, who'd been a dueling champion and still moved with that coiled readiness. Snape, dark and silent at the far end, his black eyes unreadable. And Harry's people. Ron and Hermione at his right hand, as always. Neville, steady as bedrock. Daphne, cool and sharp, a parchment of intelligence notes in front of her. The older DA members who'd fought at Hogsmeade and proven themselves, Fred and George Weasley, Lee Jordan, Angelina Johnson, Alicia Spinnet. 30 fighters. Against whatever Voldemort had left. Here's what we know. Harry stood at the center of the table's arc, and the castle's acoustics carried his voice without effort. Voldemort is at Riddle Manor in Little Hangleton. He's been there since Hogsmeade, confirmed by Snape's last contact and corroborated by Mundungus Fletcher's surveillance. He glanced at Snape. How many does he have left? Snape's voice was low, clipped. Fewer than 30 capable fighters. The Hogsmeade losses were severe, not just in captures but in morale. Several of the outer circle have fled the country. The Lestranges remain loyal. Greyback and his pack. Yaxley. Perhaps 25 total, with the werewolves. Defenses. Anti-apparition wards extending half a mile from the manor. Anti-portkey. Muggle repelling. Several dark detection wards that will trigger if more than 5 magical signatures approach simultaneously. Snape paused. He is also paranoid to the point of instability. The loss of the Horcruxes, he knows they're gone. He feels it. The man I served for 20 years is, diminished. Erratic. Dangerous in the way a cornered animal is dangerous. Good, said Moody, his magical eye spinning. Erratic makes mistakes. Erratic also makes unpredictable, Hermione countered. If he's lost his rationality, we can't assume he'll follow logical defensive patterns. Which is why we're not approaching this like a siege. Harry drew his wand and traced a shape in the air, the castle's magic responded, forming a luminous three-dimensional map of Little Hangleton that hung above the table. Riddle Manor at its center, the village below, the graveyard to the east. We're approaching it like a hunt. He outlined the plan. It was simple, Harry insisted on simple, because complex plans fell apart the moment they contacted reality. 3 teams. Moody leading the first, experienced Order members, hitting the ward perimeter from the south, drawing attention, making noise. Kingsley leading the second from the east, Aurors and combat-trained fighters, applying pressure, forcing the Death Eaters to spread their defense. And the third team? McGonagall asked, though her expression said she already knew. Me. Through the ley line. Silence. Neville leaned forward. You can do that? Travel through the ley lines? I think so. The network connects every major magical site in Britain. Hogwarts to Little Hangleton, there's a line that passes through the village. The graveyard sits directly on it. Harry looked at the map, at the glowing thread of gold that ran beneath the landscape. I come up inside his perimeter. Below the wards. While he's focused on the 2 assault teams hitting him from outside. Alone? Ron's voice was flat. Not alone. But small. Me, and whoever can handle the ley line transit without, he hesitated. I don't know what it feels like. I've never done it. It might be rough. I can do it. Neville. Immediate, certain. The earth magic, the Longbottom connection. I've been feeling the lines for weeks. I can travel them. I'm coming. Ron. No hesitation either. Ron, don't. Ron's jaw was set, his eyes fierce. Don't you dare tell me to stay behind. I've been beside you for every single fight since we were 11. I'm not sitting this one out because you've got magic rocks and I don't. Harry looked at his best friend. Saw the determination there, not bravado, not recklessness. Just absolute, bone-deep loyalty that refused to be sidelined. The transit might hurt. Noted. I'm coming. Hermione opened her mouth, and Harry shook his head. I need you with Kingsley's team. You're the best combat strategist we have. If things go sideways topside, you'll see the adjustment faster than anyone. She wanted to argue. He could see it. But Hermione's brilliance included knowing when logic overrode emotion, and she nodded tightly. Fine. But you come back. All 3 of you come back, or I'll find a way to resurrect you just to kill you myself. Noted. Dumbledore spoke for the first time. Harry. When you face him, he will have nothing left to lose. No Horcruxes. No political power. No army that can stand against yours. A man with nothing to lose is free to do anything. I know. Harry met the old man's eyes. That's why I'm not giving him time to think about it. We go today. Now. Before he runs, before he regroups, before he does something truly desperate. Dumbledore nodded slowly. Then I will join Alastair's team. My wand may still be of some use. Your wand held him off in the Ministry atrium last year. It'll be useful. Harry looked around the table, at every face, every pair of eyes. His people. His allies. Some by old friendship, some by new alliance, some by simple shared purpose. One more thing. This isn't about killing. If Voldemort can be captured, if he surrenders, he won't, Snape said quietly. I've known him for 20 years. He will die before he submits to imprisonment. Death holds no fear for a man who's spent his life fleeing it. Then we give him what he's been running from. Harry's voice was calm. Steady. Certain. But we don't become what he is. We fight clean. We take prisoners where we can. The Death Eaters who throw down their wands live to face trial. Understood? Nods around the table. Even Moody, grudgingly. Good. Teams assemble in 20 minutes. We move in 30. The table erupted into controlled chaos, people standing, grouping, checking weapons and supplies. Harry watched them for a moment, then slipped away. He needed 5 minutes alone with the castle before he left it. He pressed his palm against the wall of the great hall and closed his eyes. I might not come back, he thought. The castle's response was immediate, a surge of warmth, of denial, of fierce protective energy that pushed against him like a gale. Absolutely not. Its sovereign was not permitted to die. Not now. Not after 1,000 years of waiting. Harry smiled. I'll try. But if I don't, protect them. Everyone inside these walls. That's your job now, regardless of who holds the title. A pause. Then acceptance, reluctant, unhappy, but real. The castle would endure. It always had. Thank you, Harry thought. For choosing me. The stones warmed under his hand one final time, and Harry let go. The ley line transit was nothing like apparition. Apparition was compression, being squeezed through a tube, everything tight and dark and airless. The ley line was expansion. Harry pressed his consciousness down into the earth, found the golden thread of energy beneath Hogwarts, and let it take him. He dissolved, not painfully, but utterly. He was not a body for an instant. He was pure magical intent, moving through the earth at the speed of thought, flowing along a channel older than human civilization. Ron's consciousness flickered beside him, less defined, rougher, gripping the current like a man clinging to a rope in a river. Hurting, probably, but holding on. And Neville was glorious in the ley line. He expanded into it like he'd been born for this, his Longbottom magic singing in harmony with the earth's flow, stabilizing all three of them. It took seconds. Or hours. Time meant nothing in the transit. Then Harry felt the destination, the graveyard at Little Hangleton, the ley line surfacing near the old bone yard where Voldemort had been resurrected over a year ago. He pulled them up. Out. Into reality. They burst from the earth between two leaning tombstones, gasping and solid and real. Ron staggered, went to one knee, retched. Neville landed like a cat, barely winded. Harry was somewhere between, shaky but functional, the rings blazing on his fingers as they readjusted to the physical world. That, Ron gasped, was the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Including the spiders. You all right? Brilliant. Fantastic. Never doing that again. Ron wiped his mouth and stood, wand already in hand. Where are we? Harry looked around. The graveyard. Evening gloom, they'd lost some time in transit. The old church loomed to their left. And up the hill, perhaps 200 meters away, Riddle Manor rose against the darkening sky. Lights in the windows. Movement behind the glass. They were inside the ward perimeter. Below the detection threshold. 3 people arriving from underground rather than approaching from the surface. Voldemort's wards hadn't been designed to watch for that. Up the hill, Harry said. Quiet until we reach the house. They moved. 3 figures ghosting between tombstones, up the overgrown slope, toward the manor. Harry could feel Voldemort's presence ahead, that cold void in the magical landscape, diminished from what it had been but still potent. Still deadly. A distant boom, Moody's team hitting the southern wards. The night sky lit up briefly with the flash of combat magic. Shouts from inside the manor. Running feet on gravel. The distraction was working. Death Eaters poured from the house, not all of them, but enough. Racing toward the southern perimeter where Dumbledore's Patronus was probably already carving through their ranks like silver fire. A second boom, the east. Kingsley's team engaging. More Death Eaters scrambled out. Now, Harry said. They reached the manor's kitchen entrance. Locked, sealed with dark magic. Harry pressed his hand against the door and the Slytherin ring flared. Riddle Manor sat on the Slytherin ley line. The same blood that gave Harry his lordship had lived in this house for generations. The wards hesitated, confused by the conflicting signals. Enemy approach versus bloodline recognition. Harry pushed harder. The conquest rite blazed through the ring like a battering ram, and the door blew inward off its hinges. They surged inside. Dark corridor, peeling wallpaper, the smell of decay and dark magic. The house was rotting from Voldemort's presence, years of inhabitation by a creature who corroded everything around him. Sounds of fighting from outside, closer now, spreading. The assault teams were pushing through the perimeter defenses. Harry's group had minutes before Voldemort realized the exterior attacks were diversions. Ground floor clear, Neville murmured, his senses extending through the building's foundations. He's upstairs. First floor. Large room, maybe a study or drawing room. 2 others with him. Just 2. Everyone else went outside. Harry took the stairs 2 at a time. No stealth now, just speed. The landing opened to a hallway. 1 door at the end. Light spilling under it, not warm light. Cold. Green tinged. He didn't slow. Didn't pause for a dramatic entrance. Harry hit the door with a blasting hex and went through the explosion. The drawing room was large, dusty, dominated by a massive fireplace. Voldemort stood before the mantel, and the 2 Death Eaters beside him were Bellatrix Lestrange, free from wherever she'd recovered after Hogsmeade, and Barty Crouch Jr. Harry registered the shock of that last one distantly. Crouch was supposed to be kissed. Broken out somehow, that was a problem for later. Voldemort spun toward the destroyed door, wand raised. His red eyes found Harry and something complex moved through them, fury, fear, and a terrible resignation that lasted only a fraction of a second before it was consumed by combat instinct. Potter, Avada Kedavra. Bellatrix shrieked, her wand already moving. Neville hit her with a chunk of masonry he'd ripped from the wall with his bare magic, no wand, just will and earth strength. It struck her wand arm and she screamed, the killing curse going wild, blasting a hole in the ceiling. Neville was on her in the next instant, his wand up, his face carved from stone. This was the woman who'd tortured his parents into insanity. He didn't need motivation. Ron engaged Crouch, a fierce exchange of hexes and shields, Ron's combat training against Crouch's dark arts expertise. They crashed through a doorway into an adjacent room, spells lighting up the dark like lightning. And Harry faced Voldemort. For a frozen moment, neither moved. They stood 10 feet apart in a ruined drawing room, the sounds of battle raging around them and through the walls and outside in the night. Harry, blazing with the light of 3 lordship rings and the ley line energy rising through the floor. Voldemort, cold and terrible and mortal, his wand trained on the boy who'd been his nemesis since infancy. You've destroyed them all, Voldemort said. Not a question. His voice was strange, thin, almost brittle. The voice of a man whose foundations had been ripped away. My anchors. My legacy. My immortality. All of it. And now you come to finish it. The prophecy's instrument. Dumbledore's weapon. I'm nobody's weapon. Harry kept his wand steady, pointed at Voldemort's chest. This isn't about prophecy. Prophecies are just predictions, they don't make anything happen. This is about a man who murders children and tortures families and poisons the land itself with dark magic. This is about stopping you. You cannot stop me. Voldemort straightened, and there was something almost dignified in it, the last defiance of a man who knew he was cornered. I am Lord Voldemort. I have transcended the limitations, you're Tom Riddle. A scared boy from a London orphanage who was so afraid of dying that he tore his own soul apart. Harry's voice was quiet but it carried. I know because I was a scared boy too. Cupboard under the stairs. Hand me down everything. Told I was worthless, told I was nothing. The difference between us isn't power or blood or destiny. It's that I found people worth living for, and you never did. Something cracked in Voldemort's expression. Not softening, something worse. The final abandonment of any pretense of superiority. What was left underneath was raw, desperate, vicious. He attacked. Not with a single spell, with everything. Voldemort's wand became a blur, chains of dark magic pouring from it in continuous streams. Killing curses, torture curses, blasting hexes, fire curses, transfiguration attacks, furniture becoming snakes, floor becoming quicksand, air becoming poison. A torrent of destruction driven by a master's skill and a madman's desperation. Harry moved. Not defensively. Not reactively. He stepped into the assault, his rings blazing, his wand dancing, and the ley line beneath his feet surging upward through the old house's foundation. The drawing room floor cracked and golden light poured through the gaps, raw magical energy, the blood of the earth itself, answering its sovereign's need. He deflected the killing curse with a conjured slab of marble, the remnants of the fireplace mantle, ripped free and interposed in the spell's path. Shattered the torture curse with a pure magic counterspell that the Potter ring fed him, old family magic, protective magic, the kind that had saved him as a baby. Burned through the poisoned air with a wave of fire drawn from the ley line, not fiend fire, something older and cleaner, golden flames that consumed dark magic like oxygen. And he cast. Not with words, beyond words now, operating at the level where magic was intent and will rather than incantation. Chains of silver light erupted from his wand, seeking Voldemort, trying to bind. Voldemort slashed them apart and Harry was already casting the next thing, a concussive blast that cracked the wall behind the Dark Lord, sending him staggering. Voldemort recovered and sent back a wave of darkness, literal shadow, dense and choking, filling the room. Harry raised the Slytherin ring and the darkness recoiled. It was Slytherin magic, dark, yes, but still Slytherin. And Harry was the Slytherin Lord. He claimed it, turned it, sent it rushing back at its caster. Voldemort dispersed his own spell with a snarl and they clashed again, wands meeting in a stream of connected magic, golden thread between them. Brother wands. Phoenix cores. The same connection as the graveyard. But Harry was different now. Stronger. Rooted. He didn't fight the connection. He fed it. Poured the ley line's energy through his wand, into the golden thread, toward Voldemort. Not a spell, raw magic, unfiltered, overwhelming. The thread brightened to blinding intensity and Voldemort screamed, his wand hand burning, the connection forcing more power through the link than his weapon could handle. Voldemort's wand exploded. The U-wand, 13.5 inches, Phoenix feather core, twin to Harry's own, shattered in Voldemort's grip. Fragments of wood and the glowing remains of the core scattered across the room. Voldemort staggered back, his wand hand blackened, disarmed in the most absolute sense possible. Harry lowered his wand. "It's over, Tom." Voldemort looked at his destroyed hand. At the remains of his wand on the floor. At Harry, standing in a room crackling with golden energy, 3 rings blazing, untouched and barely breathing hard. No. The word was barely a whisper. No. I am Lord Voldemort. I cannot, I will not, he lunged. Not with magic, he had no wand, no focus, no Horcruxes to draw power from. He lunged with his bare hands, with wandless magic that crackled around his fingers, with the desperate fury of a cornered animal making its final charge. Harry didn't move. The ley line moved for him. The floor of Riddle Manor erupted, golden light and ancient stone and the pure magical will of the British landscape, and caught Voldemort mid-lunge. Not gently. The earth rose around him like hands, like jaws, like chains. Stone and root and raw magic wrapping around the Dark Lord's body, pinning his arms, restraining his legs, growing up his torso until only his head remained free. Voldemort thrashed. His wandless magic sparked and crackled against his bonds, but the ley line was not a spell that could be countered. It was geology. It was the world itself refusing to accept him. Harry walked forward until they were face to face. Voldemort's red eyes blazed with fury and terror in equal measure, his lipless mouth twisted in a snarl that was half scream. You could surrender, Harry said quietly. Stand trial. Face justice. I will never, I know. Harry raised his wand. I know you won't. You'd rather die than live without power. That's always been true. Voldemort stopped struggling. For one moment, one single, strange moment, something shifted in his expression. The fury drained away, replaced by something almost peaceful. Almost grateful. Do it, Tom Riddle whispered. I'm so tired. Harry looked at him. At the ruin of a man who'd been a brilliant orphan boy 70 years ago. A boy who'd been failed by every institution meant to protect him, the orphanage, the school, the government. Failed and failed and failed until he'd become the failure himself, spreading it outward like infection. Harry felt pity. Genuine, helpless pity. And he felt certainty. Avada Kedavra. The green light left his wand and struck Tom Marvolo Riddle in the chest. The red eyes went blank. The body sagged in its earthen bonds. The cold presence that had haunted the magical world for decades vanished, not slowly, not with drama. Simply gone. Like a candle flame pinched between fingers. The earth released the body. It crumpled to the floor, small, somehow. Diminished in death the way all tyrants were, reduced to meat and bone and the fading echoes of terrible choices. Harry stood over him and felt nothing like triumph. Nothing like joy. Just a vast, quiet finality. Like the last page of a very long book. Behind him, Neville appeared in the doorway. Blood on his cheek, but standing. Lestrange is down. Stunned and bound. Crouch? Harry asked without turning. Ron's voice from further back, unconscious. Bastard could fight, I'll give him that. Harry nodded. Turned away from the body. Walked toward his friends and didn't look back. The aftermath was noise and chaos and bureaucracy that Harry endured because it was necessary. Horrors swarmed Riddle Manor within minutes, Kingsley's team and then reinforcements from the Ministry, tramping through the old house with their wands out and their eyes wide. They found the body. Confirmed the death. Somebody sent a Patronus to the Ministry and somebody else sent one to the Prophet, and within an hour the news was spreading across Britain like wildfire. Harry sat on the front steps of Riddle Manor and let the Medowitch check him over. He wasn't injured, not a scratch, which seemed absurd given what had just happened. But his magic was depleted in a deep, fundamental way. The ley line had given everything he'd asked and more, and now his body was paying the interest. Ron sat beside him, a nasty burn on his forearm being treated by a second Medowitch. Neville on his other side, silent and steady, his hand resting on the earth as though drawing comfort from it. You all right? Ron asked. Harry considered the question. Was he? He'd just killed a man. Cast the killing curse, the one unforgivable he'd sworn he'd never use. He'd felt the magic of it leave his wand, felt the intent required to make it work. Not hatred. Not cruelty. Just absolute certainty that this was necessary, that this ended now, that there was no other way. Was he all right? I will be, he said. Ron nodded. Didn't push. That was the thing about Ron, people underestimated him constantly, but he had an emotional intelligence that surpassed most people twice his age. He knew when to talk and when to simply be present. Hermione found them 20 minutes later, practically sliding down the hill from where the Eastern assault had breached. Her robes were torn, her hair was a disaster, and there was a manic energy in her eyes that said she'd been worried sick and was now converting that worry into furious motion. You're alive, she said, stopping in front of Harry. You're alive and whole and he's dead. Dead. Good. She sat down on the step below him, put her head in her hands, and shook for about 30 seconds. Then she straightened, wiped her face, and said, "We need to secure the body. Prevent anyone claiming it wasn't really him. Full magical verification, Hermione." Harry put his hand on her shoulder. It's done. The Aurors have it. Let them work. She looked up at him with eyes that were red but clear. You used the killing curse. Yes. She didn't ask why. Didn't judge. Just held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded and leaned against his knee. They sat there, the four of them, because Neville had earned that place as surely as Ron and Hermione, on the steps of a dead man's house, and watched the night fill with lights as the magical world responded to the news that Lord Voldemort was gone. Hogwarts welcomed him home like a living thing greeting its returning heart. Harry stepped through the gates at midnight, exhausted beyond anything he'd ever felt, held upright mostly by stubbornness and the arms of his friends, and the castle sang. Not audibly. In the wards, in the stones, in the very air. A tone of completion, of joy, of profound and ancient satisfaction. The grounds lit up. Every torch, every window, every magical light source in the castle blazing to life simultaneously. The suits of armor in the entrance hall slammed their visors open and raised their swords in salute. The portraits erupted in cheering, hundreds of painted figures applauding, weeping, embracing each other. Bloody hell, Ron murmured. Students and staff were pouring into the entrance hall, word had reached the castle ahead of them, and nobody was sleeping tonight. Harry saw McGonagall first, her face wet with tears she wasn't bothering to hide. Flitwick beside her, standing on a chair, actually jumping up and down. Sprout, beaming like a summer morning. Even the ghosts had assembled, floating near the ceiling, translucent and solemn and somehow radiating happiness. Dumbledore was already there, he'd returned ahead of them, having apparat from Riddle Manor the moment the area was secured. He stood at the back of the crowd, leaning on the wall, looking more exhausted than Harry had ever seen him. But his eyes were bright. The crowd parted for Harry without being asked. He walked through the entrance hall, through his people, his school, his home, and they reached out as he passed. Not grabbing, not demanding. Just touching, his shoulder, his arm, his hand. Confirming he was real. That he was back. That it was over. Daphne was at the foot of the main staircase with Astoria beside her. The younger girl's face was still pale from Hogsmeade, but she was smiling, a bright, uncomplicated smile of pure relief. Daphne's expression was more complex, pride, worry, something softer that she quickly masked. You did it, Daphne said. We did it. Harry stopped in front of her. Your intelligence. Not information. Your sister's bravery. All of it mattered. Daphne's mask slipped, just for a second. She reached out and gripped his hand, quick and fierce, then released it. Don't do anything that's stupid again. No promises. Theodore Nott appeared behind the Greengrass sisters, still pale, still thin from his ordeal, but standing straight. His left arm, the one with the mark, hung at his side, and as Harry watched, the boy pushed up his sleeve. The dark mark was gone. Not suppressed by the castle's wards, gone. Blank skin where the skull and serpent had been. It vanished, Nott said, his voice cracking. An hour ago. It just burned for a second and then, nothing. Harry nodded. With Voldemort dead, the magic binding the marks would have died too. Across Britain, Death Eaters were losing their brand. For some, the willing, the enthusiastic, it would be just a cosmetic change. For the coerced, the trapped, the ones like Theodore Nott who'd been held down and forced, it was freedom. Come on, Harry said to the crowd at large, his voice carrying in the acoustics of the entrance hall. I need food and sleep, in that order. And in the morning, he paused, looking around at the faces watching him. His people. His responsibility. His privilege. In the morning, we start building something better. The great hall filled within minutes. The house tables were abandoned, students sitting wherever they liked, the old divisions temporarily forgotten in the shared euphoria. House elves appeared with food in quantities that suggested they'd been cooking since word arrived. Harry sat at what was technically the Gryffindor table, flanked by his people, and ate more than he'd eaten in days while the hall buzzed with conversation and celebration around him. Dumbledore appeared at his shoulder during the meal. "Harry. A word? When you're ready." "Now's fine." Harry stood, grabbed a roll for the road, and followed the headmaster to the relative quiet of the antechamber behind the head table. Dumbledore looked at him for a long moment. The twinkle was back in his eyes but tempered now, gentler, less knowing. More human. "It is done," Dumbledore said simply. "It is. How do you feel?" Harry thought about it. Tired. Sad. Relieved. He paused. "I killed him. Used the killing curse. I'm going to need to sit with that for a while." Dumbledore nodded slowly. "That you feel the weight of it, that you recognize it as something to sit with rather than celebrate, tells me everything I need to know about the man you're becoming." "I'm 15. Yes." A faint smile. "And already more of a man than most I've known in a century and a half of living." Harry accepted that without false modesty. "What happens now?" "Politically. Chaos, for a time. The Ministry will scramble to claim credit. Fudge may survive or may not, it hardly matters. The Wizengamot will need to address the aftermath. Trials for captured Death Eaters. Reparations for victims. Reform of the institutions that allowed Voldemort to rise twice." He looked at Harry meaningfully. "You hold 3 seats and the sovereignty of Hogwarts. You could shape that reform. If you chose to." "I intend to." Harry leaned against the wall. "But not alone. Not as a dictator. I'm going to need allies, advisors, people who know what they're doing. You have them already. Miss Granger's mind, Mr. Weasley's loyalty, Mr. Longbottom's steadiness, Miss Greengrass's political acumen. And, if you'll still have him, an old man's experience." Harry studied Dumbledore. 3 weeks ago he'd been furious with this man, for the secrets, the manipulation, the willingness to sacrifice a child. He hadn't forgotten any of it. But holding on to that fury served nothing now. "I'll still have you," Harry said. "As an advisor. Not a chess master. The days of moving pieces without their knowledge are over." "Agreed." Dumbledore extended his hand. "Partners?" Harry shook it. "Partners." The Wizengamot session 3 days later was nothing like Harry's first appearance. Then, he'd been a claimant, powerful but untested, facing challenges and skepticism. Now he walked into the chamber as the man who'd ended the Second Wizarding War. The man whose coalition had broken the Death Eaters in a single night. The Lord of 3 Houses, the Sovereign of Hogwarts, and the wizard who dueled Voldemort to the death and won. Nobody challenged him today. The chamber was packed, every seat filled, the galleries overflowing. Ministers, journalists, foreign dignitaries, ordinary citizens who'd queued since dawn for a place. The energy was electric, expectant, almost desperate. Britain's magical world had been under Voldemort's shadow for so long that the sudden absence of it left people dizzy. They needed direction. Purpose. A sense that someone was in control. Harry gave them that. He stood at the speaker's position, the center of the floor this time, not hiding behind his seat, and addressed the full Wizengamot. 3 weeks ago, I claimed 3 lordships and the castle of Hogwarts recognized me as sovereign. Since then, with the help of allies I'm proud to name, we've accomplished what many believed impossible. The Dark Lord Voldemort is dead. His Horcruxes, the anchors that preserved his twisted immortality, are destroyed. His inner circle is captured or killed. His political infrastructure has collapsed. He let that settle. The silence was absolute. But defeating Voldemort was the easy part. Murmurs. Shock. Harry waited for them to die. The hard part is fixing what allowed him to rise. Twice. In 1 generation. He looked around the chamber, at the faces watching him. Some afraid. Some angry. Some hopeful. Voldemort didn't emerge from nothing. He was created, by a system that abandoned a magical orphan to abuse, that valued blood over character, that let wealth by justice, that turned a blind eye to dark magic in high places because the practitioners had the right last names. His gaze found the empty seat where Lucius Malfoy had sat. Empty because Malfoy was in a DMLE holding cell, awaiting trial. Several other seats were similarly vacant. I'm not here to lecture. I'm not here to rule. I'm 15 years old and I know exactly how much I don't know. But I'm here with 3 votes and the influence that comes with what we've accomplished, and I'm going to use them. He produced a scroll, his proposals, drafted with Hermione's research, Daphne's political expertise, and Dumbledore's institutional knowledge. First, full reform of the child welfare system for magical orphans and at-risk children. No child with magic grows up without the magical world knowing about them, caring for them, and protecting them. This isn't charity. It's prevention. We don't create the next Voldemort by letting another Tom Riddle rot in a Muggle orphanage. Second, abolition of blood status as a legal category. It's not mud blood and pure blood. It's witch and wizard. Full stop. That means equal access to education, employment, and political representation regardless of parentage. Third, restoration of the Hogwarts endowment to its full funded level, with independent governance to prevent future raids by ministers treating it as a slush fund. He looked directly at Fudge, who had the grace to look away. The audit is complete. The numbers don't lie. 3 ministers in succession stole from our children's education to fund their campaigns and pet projects. That ends today. Fourth, reform of the Wisengamot itself. Term limits for appointed seats. Transparent voting records. And the creation of an elected representative body that gives voice to those without hereditary seats, Muggleborns, half-bloods, magical creatures with sapient status. The chamber erupted. Shouting, some in approval, some in outrage. The old guard, the blood purists, the privilege holders, they screamed about tradition, about order, about the natural hierarchy. The progressives, the moderates, the young, they shouted back. Harry let them shout. When the noise peaked, he spoke again, quietly, but the chamber's magic carried his voice above the din. These aren't demands. They're proposals. We'll debate them. Amend them. Vote on them. That's how this body is supposed to work. He raised his left hand, the Slytherin ring catching the light. But I will tell you this. I hold the sovereignty of Hogwarts. That castle will be run according to principles of equality and protection regardless of what this body decides. Any student who enters those walls is mine to protect, and I will protect them from bigotry as fiercely as I protected them from Dark Lords. He let his hand fall. The war is over. What comes next is up to all of us. But I'm going to fight for this as hard as I fought for everything else. And my track record is pretty good. Scattered laughter. The tension broke, not entirely, but enough. Harry returned to his seat and the debate began in earnest. It would take months. Years, probably. Politics was slower than war, messier, more frustrating. But the momentum was his and the old guard knew it. Malfoy's block was shattered. The neutral families, many of whom had been quietly terrorized for decades, were free to vote their conscience. And the broader magical public, galvanized by Voldemort's defeat and hungry for change, was paying attention for the first time in living memory. The first vote, on the child welfare reform, passed by a margin of 40 votes. Daphne, watching from the gallery, caught Harry's eye and inclined her head. Well played. Hogwarts settled around him that evening like a cat finding its favorite spot. Harry stood on the astronomy tower, the highest point in the castle, wind in his hair, the Scottish Highlands spread below him in the fading light. The lake was silver gold. The forest was deep green, alive with the magical creatures that made it home. Hogsmeade's lights twinkled in the distance, rebuilt already, wizarding construction being considerably faster than Muggle. He could feel everything. The wards, steady and strong. The students who'd returned early for the new term, their magical signatures like fireflies in the castle's awareness. The staff preparing for a year that would be unlike any before. Neville in the greenhouses, hands in earth, coaxing some ancient plant back to life. Ron and Hermione in the library, arguing about something, but warmly, the way they always argued. Daphne in the Slytherin common room, already organizing her house for the new reality, a Slytherin house that wouldn't need to be ashamed of itself. And the castle. Awake, alive, content. Its sovereign was home, its wounds were healing, and for the first time in 1,000 years, all 4 houses were represented in its governance. Potter for Gryffindor. Black for the old families. Slytherin for the ambitious and the cunning. And Neville, dear, strong, unexpected Neville, for the loyalty and growth of Hufflepuff and the deep wisdom of the earth itself. Harry leaned on the parapet and breathed. It wasn't over. The political battles would rage for years. The cultural shift he was pushing would face resistance at every turn. Death Eater trials would be ugly and painful. The werewolf legislation, the Muggleborn integration, the educational reform, all of it would be work. Hard, unglamorous, frustrating work. And he had his own healing to do. The Dursleys. The years of manipulation. The weight of killing, even when it was necessary. 15 years of carrying the world, even if the last 3 weeks had finally given him people to carry it with. But standing here, with the wind in his hair and the castle humming beneath his feet and his people scattered through these halls like stars in a constellation, Harry felt something he'd never felt before. Not happiness exactly, though there was that. Not peace, though there was that too. Belonging. Complete, unshakable belonging. Not to a family by blood or a house by birth, but to this place, this role, this purpose. He was Sovereign of Hogwarts, Lord of 3 houses, and a 15-year-old kid who'd somehow stumbled into becoming exactly what the world needed. Not a chosen one. A choosing one. Someone who'd been offered power and decided, every time, at every turn, to use it for others rather than himself. Footsteps on the stairs behind him. Harry didn't turn, he knew who it was. The castle told him, and besides, he'd have recognized those footsteps anywhere. Ron emerged onto the tower, 2 bottles of butterbeer in hand. Hermione sent me to make sure you weren't up here brooding. I'm not brooding. I'm contemplating. Same thing with a fancier word. Ron handed him a bottle and leaned on the parapet beside him. They looked out at the view together, best mates, as they'd been since a train compartment 5 years ago. So, Ron said after a comfortable silence. What now? Harry took a drink of butterbeer and smiled. Now. We've got a school year starting in 2 weeks. Newts to study for eventually. A political revolution to maintain. Probably some adventures I can't predict yet because that's apparently how my life works. Business as usual, then. Business as usual. Ron grinned and clinked his bottle against Harry's. They drank in companionable silence while the sun set over Hogwarts, and the castle, ancient, powerful, finally complete, settled into the evening around them like a promise. The war was over. The work was beginning. And Harry Potter, sovereign, lord, and above all else a boy who'd chosen love over power at every turning point of his life, was exactly where he belonged. Home.